Hi viewers and welcome back to the channel. So you might be thinking, how is it so happening that the transits for October are being discussed now? And that is because the planetary motions and transits which were happening in the month of October mainly commenced after the midway point of the month, which is from the 16th of October, wherein the major transformations in the planetary energy started to take place. And most of them were happening in the sign of Libra. And this is the reason why your relationships during this period is going to suffer with regards to how you're able to find the peace and the balance within these relationships in your life. And they can be differing relationships, not just your romantic relationships. And we will discuss that for each and every sign, wherein you will find that conflict within the kind of company you're keeping or the people you're around right now, which sector or which kind of realm of your life will basically have these kind of issues. But that is something that came about within, the halfway mark of the month, and this will continue up until the halfway mark of November. So these transits are going to be the same, which will conclude even in the beginning halfway through the month of November. So you definitely need to kind of get a sense of how these planetary energies are manifesting for you and what sort of challenges you might be facing, because this period is inevitably harder for everybody right now, because the planetary energies are quite intense at this point, and that is something that we will be discussing for each of the signs and what they need to be careful of, what they should be expecting, and how things will come about with all the planetary energies which are happening from this midway point of October until the midway point of November. So we're going to discuss all that in detail. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you like any of the predictions which are mentioned and if you find any relevance with anything discussed. What we also have to see here with regards to the transits that are happening and the energies which are taking place within the planetary motions right now is the fact that a lot of planets here are putting aspects onto each other. And how is that coming about? Mars, which is going to be transiting into the sign of Gemini, is going to be putting its 8th aspect onto the transiting Saturn in the sign of Capricorn. And that is basically going to have the sort of impact for each and every sign, wherein there can be these weird sort of events which might come about, which are totally sudden and unexpected. And that may lead you to have some sort of relevance with your karma and your efforts in relation to resolving that karma and that sort of trouble that you would have faced up until this point when Saturn was going retrograde in its motion. So what we also see here is that Saturn has is going to put its 10th aspect onto the transiting Sun, also the Venus and the Mercury as well as Ketu. But mainly we are going to speak about the effect that it will have because of this aspect onto the Sun, because these are enemy planets in astrology. So how is this aspect from Saturn going to impact your relationships? How this kind of dynamic is going to forge a conflict within your professional and your personal aspects in your life is something that we have to kind of be wary of, and that will be discussed for each and every sign. We also see that Mars and Saturn are right now forming a 6 and 8 relationship with each other, and Mars and Saturn are also not agreeable planets with each other. These energies are quite opposing. So having the sort of troublesome 6 and 8 relationship within these two planets can be quite detrimental when it comes to how you're able to manifest your efforts right now, how you're able to be able to get an outcome of the efforts that you're putting into things that you aspire to do, and what kind of challenges can come about with all those aspects. So all in all, this period is quite challenging, and it can have a very significant impact onto your relationships in your life, and that is something that we are going to discuss. And we will start off with discussing the sign that will feel this impact the most, and that will be Libra. So let's get on with that. So Libra natives, for you, let's see how the month of October is going to turn out based on the planetary transits that are taking place in this month. On the 2nd of October, Mercury is becoming direct and going out of its retrograde motion in the sign of Virgo, and this is happening all in your 12th house. So what this means for you is that you can start to feel all the kind of significations that would come about when Mercury turns retrograde is going to all turn positive, and all the sort of significations you could have felt positively turn out when Mercury is in the sign of Virgo is going to happen when it is in your 12th house. So this has been elaborated in a video, and I will be linking that in the description box, which will give you a better analysis of what you can expect when Mercury is coming out of the retrograde motion in the sign of Virgo. So whatever sort of significations have been mentioned in that video, all of that is going to turn opposite, and you can basically figure out how this short transit of Mercury right now in the sign of Virgo is basically going to impact you. Now what happens next is on the 16th of October, Mars is going to transit into the sign of Gemini. Until now it has been in the sign of Taurus in your 8th house, and this transit of Mars into the sign of Taurus is quite a long transit, and is going to go on for until I would say almost 8 months. So I would definitely urge you to watch the video that has been uploaded, and I will be linking it in the description box, and it will give you a bigger understanding of what sort of significations you can expect with this transit to happen. Now coming back to the transit of Mars in Gemini on the 16th of October, Mars moves into your 9th house. So what happens here is you can feel invigorated maybe to travel, to be able to, when you feel that sort of disassociation, when you feel like I just want to escape certain things in my life right now, you can actually pick up and go and, travel somewhere, want to explore something, to just catch a break from the kind of thought processes you are right now indulging in that is, troubling you in a way. So that can be something that you actually indulge in. You can also start to look into your own religious or spiritual or philosophical ideals and practices to maybe dissipate the sort of situations that you feel like you're not able to control, or something that you feel is not actually going in your benefit, just to be able to leave it up to something other than just yourself. You can sort of get into more and more of religious thought processes or even spiritual thought processes, being able to elevate that channel of soul connections and stuff like that. So that is also something that you can be interested in. There is also a possibility that you can kind of be interested right now in maybe even higher educational pursuits. You can actually feel like expanding on your educational qualifications. That thought process can come through in your mind. Maybe that is something that you feel could be a different channel to be able to manifest a different self within you. So that is also something that can be a passing thought in your mind because of this transit happening in your 9th house. Now what happens is on the 17th of October, Sun transits from your 12th house into the sign of Libra in your 1st house. This is like the tricky part. Sun is basically debilitated in the sign of Libra. It does not do well in the sign of Libra. But Sun does really well in the sign of Aries, which is conjunct or is similar to this energies of the 1st house. So this kind of dichotomy presents itself, wherein even though Sun does well in the 1st house, it does not do well in the sign of Libra. And this discomfort gets further enhanced because of the fact that Sun right now is going to get conjunct here with Ketu again, which is transiting your 1st house already. So now Sun being in the 1st house would generally mean that, your self-confidence, your own ego, your own confidence could have taken a big boost. You would have felt great about yourself. You would have felt self-assured. You would have felt that you would be able to achieve the things that you would like to. But now, as this is happening in the sign of Libra, which is its sign of debilitation or weakness, and is also getting conjunct with Ketu here, right? Which is disassociating, and which is kind of alienating that sense of confidence. So what is supposed to happen now is you're going to feel extremely unsure of yourself. You're going to feel extremely distressed about your feelings about your own self, and that is going to be very tumultuous and troubling to you right now, because you are the sort of sign that has the penchant for being extremely giving to the people around you, being extremely loving, right? Because you're ruled by the planet of love, Venus. And what happens here now is that you will sort of start to feel that how much ever energy, how much ever effort, how much ever confidence that I show in my partner or that I show in my romantic relationships is not getting reciprocated to me. And that is going to make you feel extremely dissatisfied about your own self-image, your own personality. And that is going to cause a sort of conflict within you about who am I, why am I doing this? These sort of questions might start to pop up in your head and cause you to actually start to contemplate or reevaluate how are you even viewing the relationships in your life? How are you viewing your part in the relationships around you? So that is something that can be a huge factor when it comes to Sun being transiting through your first house in the sign of Libra, but also getting conjunct with the energies of Ketu. Next, what happens is on the 18th of October, Venus, which is your ascendant lord, from the 12th house transits into your first house of self. Now again, your ascendant lord transiting its own house, its own sign, not the house, but the sign, right? Because Venus is the planet that rules the sign of Libra, and it is the best, works the best in the sign of Libra. Also Pisces, but best in the sign of Libra. So this should technically have been like a great omen for you to feel invigorated about yourself, for you to feel self-assured. Again, the same things that could have happened when Sun goes into your first house. But now this again becomes a problematic issue because Ketu again is here, right? So even though you would have wanted to feel, that my love relationships are fulfilling to me, that the contribution that I give in my relationships are being reciprocated, are balanced, are harmonious, all of these themes are going to turn on its head. So what you're going to again start to contemplate is the same thing as I've been saying. So what will happen is you'll start to contemplate your peace, the peace that the relationships around you bring you. So you'll start to contemplate if you would like to even have the relationships in your life that you're having right now, because it's all going to seem extremely dissatisfying. Nothing is going to make you feel at harmony or at peace or be fulfilled right now. So that is going to give you that major conflict wherein you'll start to wonder, is it even worth it to have this relationship in my life? What is it actually being, how is it enriching my life? Is it actually giving me something in return with how much ever I am putting into this relationship? So these kind of thoughts again permeate your senses. Now again, another thing that you should be careful about is because your ascendant lord is getting affected by Ketu, right? That already shows that you need to be careful about your physical health. All these thought processes, all these considerations about your life, all these questions are going to make you overwhelmed, and that is something that you need to be careful about, because this can kind of divert your attention from your work. It can divert your attention from your from the kind of routine that you keep, and it can maybe also disrupt your eating habits and also disrupt your digestive system because of all the stress that you're taking right now. And this is further communicated also because Jupiter is right now retrograde in your 6th house. There's a separate video that has been made on this transit, and I will be linking that in the description box as well. So you can check that out as well. So you need to be extremely careful this month about your health and how all these kind of thought processes are basically impacting your health overall. You should not let all these doubts or all these questions be detrimental to your own well-being, and that is something that you need to be careful about and you need to be cognizant of. So moving ahead, one of the biggest transits happening in this month is on the 23rd of October. Saturn is going to turn direct in the sign of Capricorn. So it was retrograde until now, and now it's going to turn direct. So what is happening here is Saturn right now is transiting through your 4th house. So all the sort of issues that you would have felt are basically coming up with your family dynamics, with your dynamics with your family at home, and things like that are going to sort of start to dissipate. You're going to feel better about your relationships with your family, and that can also be because all the other sort of mechanisms of relationships that you are depending on start to feel invaluable to you, start to feel basically not worth it. So you're going to want to depend more on your family. And that sort of energy presents itself when Saturn is right now transiting through your 4th house. So you are being pulled into that direction to actually divert that sort of energy, divert that sort of attention to your family and to your home, because they can be the support that you need right now to feel equalized, to feel harmonized, to feel at peace. So that sort of energy presents itself. Also, I have a video on the transit of Saturn retrograde, and you can definitely check that out, because whatever significations have been mentioned in that video, all of it is going to basically turn positive now. So if there was any issues relating to family or home, it's all going to turn the opposite. So you can, of course, check that video out and see what it basically entails for you when this transit happens in your 4th house. Now, moving ahead, on the 25th of October, this is quite significant. What happens is Moon is going to transit through the sign of Libra. I'm not including any other Moon's transits because it keeps on changing every 2.5 days. But the most consequential transit of Moon for you right now is a transit of Moon that happens on the 25th of October in the sign of Libra. Now, what happens here is all of this amalgamation of all of these doubts, all of these reconsiderations, all of this trouble around relationships and self-image and confidence is going to basically turn up a notch, because Moon is now going to get shadowed by its south node, right? So your emotions are going to take a huge toll during this time. So for the next 2.5 days, it's going to feel literally like hell, because you're going to feel like all of this trouble is literally standing on top of your head, and it is making you incapacitated to think about anything else other than, just obsess about your relationships, to obsess about what is happening in your life when it comes to your romantic relationships, even to your business relationships. So that sort of feeling can come about. So you have to be patient with yourself. You have to give yourself the grace to actually step back and kind of regulate your thought processes and not have it turn into this downward spiral, which finally makes you impaired and your health be detrimental. So that is something that you should be careful about as well. Now, on the 26th of October, Mercury is going to be moving into the sign of Libra. And what this basically means for you is that, so typically we would assume that Mercury coming out of the retrograde is a good thing, which it is, because the significations of Mercury become much better. But now what happens here this month is that Mercury is getting conjunct with Ketu, or the south node of the moon. So even though we expect this forward direct motion of the Mercury to actually make the significations of Mercury better, it still doesn't turn as good as we would want it to. So what does this mean? So Mercury, typically when it would have been in Libra and in your first house, could have meant that you could have felt really communicatively adept at being able to talk about your feelings, maybe even also talk about, maybe if you're interested in someone and things like that. So all the good significations. But what happens is Ketu is a entity in astrology that basically separates you or disassociates you from things, right? So as it gets conjunct with Mercury here on the 2nd of October, when it moves into the sign of Libra, what we can expect to happen here is that you can feel distant in your communications with your partner. You can feel that your communicational channels and patterns are failing when it comes to being able to connect with your partner, to be able to strike a balance, to be able to make a peacekeeping situation, because Libras are known to vouch, to be able to, balance the scales, be able to come to a justifiable end goal that is harmonious for everyone. But what happens here is you will start to feel that dissipate, that effort that you're putting into these things will not materialize as you would like it to. So this is going to impact the communicational channels in your relationship, and that is sort of going to make you feel a little alienated and not as great about yourself as you would have wanted to. It can also show that there might be some activities that maybe you partake in that is, one of your interests or something that you actually enjoy or have fun with, which involves being around people or something of that sort, and that is also something that can get affected. So your ability to actually enjoy, to be able to enjoy the company of people, is also going to become a little problematic. So you can become a little disassociated from people. You can want to be a little more alone, value your solitude more, and try to disassociate from the kind of things that are happening around you, which you can feel like you're not in control of. So that is the sort of things that we can expect when Mercury turns in your first house of self and is getting conjunct with the energies of Ketu. The tail end of the month, on the 30th of October, Mars is going to turn retrograde in the sign of Gemini. So what this is basically going to express for you is that anything that has been expressed about the sign of Gemini, cultivating the kind of things when it comes to Mars, is all going to turn on its head. So your communication might come out to be quite harsh to people around you. You might actually not be able to communicate as well with your father. You can feel that you're not able to cultivate your interests that you kind of developed about religious, spiritual, and philosophical ideals, and that is going to take you into a negative impact of what that understanding should have done in your progress. So all of these kind of themes are going to come about when Mars turns into the retrograde motion in the sign of Gemini. So all in all, this month can be a little challenging for you, Libra. So lean on your family right now, because they can be your biggest supporters, and whatever doubts you're having about your relationships, all the reconsiderations you're doing about the relationships in your life, don't let it negatively impact your health and your ideals about your own self, how you view yourself, and even your thought processes, because that can be detrimental to your health. So I hope you tide through this month of October and have a great month. Let me know in the comment section if anything expressed in this video resonated with you. Thank you so much for watching. So Scorpio, let's see how this period from the mid of October until the mid of November is going to be for you based on the planetary transits that are taking place in this month. So first we start off with, on the 16th of October, Mars is going to transit into the sign of Gemini. So Mars being the lord of the sign that rules you, and that going into the 8th house is quite a significant thing. So what we can see to come about with this transit is that you can feel that your real self is in a way quite secretive and quite mysterious at this point, even more so than you generally are. So what can happen is that you can be quite withholding um, of your intentions in a way, because especially when it comes to things like partnerships and like intimacy in partnerships. So it can get quite intense during this period, wherein you can experience even maybe feelings of things like passion, jealousy, possessiveness, that the very intense tones of intimacy can come about during this time. And you can also sort of see that your focus and your drive to basically learn and kind of delve into the mysterious or occult subjects can actually give rise to you getting more knowledge on things like, let's say, maybe even astrology, or generally just things which not many people know or talk about. So that sort of thing can be of interest to you right now, and you can sort of even network and kind of develop connections with people based on this interest within occult subjects. So that is also something that you can see to come about with this aspect and this transit. What we can also expect to happen with this is that you can become quite driven to basically understand how to catapult and how to basically be able to revert other people's profits into your owns. So what I mean by this is that you can kind of be looking into how your profits can be maximized by catapulting them from other people's profits, or basically shared assets, or basically benefiting from other people's resources is something that you can look into and be interested in as well. Now, what happens here also is that Mars from your 8th house puts its 8th aspect onto the transiting Saturn in your 3rd house. So what this can say is that, especially when it comes to how you are going to deal with your professional prospects and how you're basically putting in efforts within your professional atmosphere, and what sort of outcomes are you expectant of, can basically be right now charged in a way where you feel fearless within conquering any kind of setbacks to you, and you are right now looking ahead and being able to charge through with a sort of renewed energy to be able to deal with any transformations or sudden events that might come about, even with regards to your professional prospects, and even with regards to your general communicational and networking skills. So that is something that can come about with this 8th aspect onto the transiting Saturn in your 3rd house. So you can feel quite fearless, and you can feel quite reassured with the efforts that you're putting into your professional prospects and your work equations. So that is something that can come about as well with that aspect. So next what we see is that on the 17th of October, Sun is going to transit into the sign of Libra, and this is happening in your 12th house, where it's already getting conjunct with the Ketu, which has been transiting in this house for a long time now. So what comes about here is a loss to a certain extent of sense of self. And why does this happen? Because Sun is a illuminating planet, which basically in astrology can signify your personality, which can signify your soul. And that getting debilitated or weakened in the sign of Libra, and further getting having negative impact come about because of it getting conjunct with Ketu, basically means that you can actually have these weird karmic connections with people when it comes to especially romantic relationships. It can also be your business partnerships, but I would say the emphasis here somehow comes onto your romantic relationships. And you can feel in a way that there is a loss of an equilibrium, or the loss of the peace and the love that you have, in case you have any existing relationships as well. So there can be a sense of losing out on your romantic equations, or whatever relationships, and that can even sort of impact your own sense of self and how you kind of relate uh, with being as a part of that, to some, as in with your partner. So that can be something that you will encounter during this period, and that can even lead you to have sort of disassociating, isolating sort of tendencies at this point. So, to become even more retreated, to be even more hidden, to be even more mysterious, to be even more reclusive, that those sort of attributes can represent themselves even further. And that can, lead to you maybe getting into the kind of equations, especially when it comes to physical equations with people, which you wouldn't have otherwise. So it can be a little tricky sort of equation and energy revolving around romantic partnerships, especially. And what we also see here is that on the 18th of October, we see that Venus is also going to be transiting into the sign of Libra, and this is again going to happen in your 12th house. And it's also now getting conjunct with Ketu. So generally, what should have technically happened is the fact that Venus would have performed exceptionally well in the sign of Libra, because it rules that sign. Now, and also it does really well in the sign of Pisces, and also the same energies are exhibited by the 12th house. So it would have been an exceptional sort of transit with regards to even relationships and even money. But because of the Ketu's present being here, it kind of takes away from those positive connotations. So what can come about here is that all this trouble, as I explained before, regarding the kind of love that you feel, or the kind of pleasure, or the kind of relationship that you aspire to have with your partner, because of the fact that it is not coming about in that sense, so you can sort of feel the need to disassociate and even kind of flee away. So there can be possibilities wherein you kind of want to run away from your problems at this point, especially when it comes to relationship issues. So you can want to travel far abroad and take a break, or things of that sort. You might maybe also indulge in some sort of breakup or loss of relationship, or you might actually just take a break, or for a brief amount of time, and kind of alienate yourself to a certain extent, to kind of make sense of the situation that is arising right now. So that sort of feeling can also arise. This can also make you contemplate and sort of find some answers with regards to this, when it comes to things which are, very based on things like spirituality, especially. So you can want to find answers to these issues while trying to decipher, while trying to research, while trying to explore your options with regards to things like spirituality, philosophy, and religion, and things like that. So that can also come about as something that you're interested in right now, because of all the other issues which kind of seem out of your reach at this point. So yeah, so what happens next is, on the 23rd of October, Saturn is turning direct in your third house. So this basically is going to give you a positive connotation when it comes to your self efforts. So you can feel quite self assured of your endeavors at this point. So any sort of work that you undertake can feel exceptionally well, wherein you don't sit and question your efforts, or you don't sit and question, like, imposter syndrome is not something that you will be tackling with at this point, because of the Saturn's direct motion. So you can feel quite self-assured of that reason. And it can also show that because also Rahu is present in your 6th house. So your focus right now is very much based on kind of radicalizing in a way your work, how you're working, and how do you kind of take that work and how to materialize your efforts into your work, better work efficiency and things like that. So that prospect is really positive, and you can know more about how this transit is going to impact you, and there's a video which is has been released on the channel, and I will be linking that in the description box. You can watch that. It is exclusively basically made for the retrograde Saturn's motion, but because the same connotations are going to be present, just that all the negative connotations are going to now turn positive and feel more forward, in a more forward momentum. Hence, you can watch that and understand how the significations are going to come about for you. Now, what also happens is that this Saturn in the 3rd house is putting its 10th aspect onto your 12th house. So all these planets which are present there, be it Ketu, Sun and Venus at this point, are all getting that aspect. So what this says is that when it comes to your career, when it comes to how you're basically, being able to manage your career, I don't think that is something that is a major prospect of worry for you right now. But when it comes to the effort that you're able to put into your romantic relationships, that can be something which is where your karma for this transitory period is right now enlarged or is kind of in trouble. So you need to make peace with how much effort do you really want to put into your relationships when it comes to balancing them out, when it comes to pursuing them. Do you even want to continue to be in that situation, or would just bouncing away and running out from the problems is really going to pose any sort of solutions? So kind of making that coherence wherein you have to be able to understand how to put your efforts into the aspect and realm of your romantic relationships especially, and how sort of this new understanding and new interest into occult subjects can even lead you to have a reformed perspective regarding these instances and these equations as well. So that is something that can be, something that you need to look into. And when it comes to your work perspective, you have to be extremely careful that the kind of equations that you have around with the people in your team or the people that you work with needs to be something that you have to be careful of. And that is something that you need to be, in a way, managing on backhand. So rather than being extremely upfront about the fact that you need to manage something regarding, these things, you can very covertly, in a way, try to make sure that everything is working in a way where the cogs are churning in the direction that you want them to, and it basically leads you to have a better output to whatever efforts that you're putting in right now at your work as well. So what we see next is on the 25th of October, Moon is going to be transiting in the sign of Libra. So I have not discussed Moon's other transits throughout the period that we're discussing, the planetary transits, and that is because Moon keeps on changing its sign every 2.5 days. So but the main reason for picking this Moon's transit out was because this is going to conjoin all these troubling planets which are already being present in the energies exhibiting in your 12th house. And also on the 25th, we are also experiencing a solar eclipse. So what does this basically say is that we, especially you and your sign, needs to be very careful of how these disassociating and isolating tendencies, how are they really helping you to basically mend or to be able to equalize the scales in your relationship. So if you are feeling dissatisfied at this point regarding the efforts that you're putting into your relationship, maybe rather than disassociating and running away from your issues, it would be much better to work towards it and try to, make that effort to be able to sustain something in order uh, to enjoy the time when it's not just fair weather, and to be able to weather the storms that's going to come about during this period of time. And it is going to basically cause a sort of emotional conflict at this point, wherein all these emotional energies come to a heat, and it makes you kind of become impaired in a way with regards to your feelings, with regards to how you're dealing with it mentally. So that is something that you have to be careful of, and not let yourself succumb into this tumultuous catapulting energy with regards to your romantic relationships. Now, what happens next is on the 26th of October, Mercury is going to be transiting in the sign of Libra. So already all the energy being present in the 12th house is getting further exacerbated by Mercury coming into your 12th house. So any sort of communicational channels that you were trying to establish, that you were trying to fester or come forth with, in able to have some sort of conflict resolution in order to make some sense out of whatever issues you were facing within your romantic relationships, is something that you will have to now consider actually leaving about, because Mercury is not really strong in the 12th house. And already with all the other planets which are present here, Ketu being present here kind of warps the communicational abilities that you would have generally had with regards to communicating whatever grievances, whatever issues you are able to face right now within your romantic partnerships. So the communicational channels are going to be extremely hard to maintain, extremely hard to be able to see eye to eye with regards to your partnerships, and that is something that is going to further catapult these issues and make them a little even more harder to be able to reconcile, and to be able to maybe even reconsider coming together and things like that. So that is something that you have to again be wary of and careful of as well. Now, towards the tail end of the month, on the 30th of October, Mars is going to turn retrograde in Gemini. So all the significations that we basically discussed in the beginning of this prediction are all going to turn opposite. So, and this energy happening in your 8th house is a little precarious, also because it's your lord of the the sign that rules you. So you have to be extremely careful of how you're able to manifest the quotient of intimacy, especially that you have with others. It should not be in a way vengeance seeking, or in a way incited by any sort of actions which come about in a way with not the best intentions. So that is something that you have to look out for. And also the need to kind of have this profit being made from others' resources can turn a little negative. So you have to be careful of that as well. So all in all, this period is a little challenging for all signs, and I hope you're able to sort of reconcile, understand what's happening in your relationships, and maybe even make peace in case there is a loss of that relationship or partnership. Let me know in the comment section if any of these predictions resonated with you, and thank you so much for watching. So Sagittarius, let's see how this period from the mid of October until the mid of November is going to turn out for you based on the planetary transits that are taking place during this period. So we see firstly on the 16th of October, Mars is going to transit into the sign of Gemini, and this is happening in your 7th house. So this can show the propensity of actually being able to cultivate a more passionate demeanor, and the intimacy quotient in your relationships can actually become higher, and that can also lead you to have maybe be more geared towards communicating regarding your desires, regarding your things that you're looking out for in partnerships. So that can be one of the themes that can be expected. You can also, when it comes to, let's say, your business partnerships, be extremely communicative of how you seem to want to, the direction that you would like your business partnerships to take, and how you would basically have the communication between interests and how you would like to materialize profits. So that sort of equation can also come about. And all in all, you can feel quite charged to basically be able to make better connections and be able to have more networking opportunities. But there is also a downside to this, wherein you can also see an uptake in the sort of communicational channels wherein there is maybe resolved some sort of conflict which arises, wherein you have to resolve it, but it does not go exactly the way you would expect it to, and it can turn a little ugly, wherein you can have verbal spats with your partners, and there can be exchange of words which are not as kind, and it can lead and even border to harsh communication with your partners. So that is something that you also have to still look out for. So these kind of energies are prevalent when it comes to the Mars's transit in your 7th house. Now, what happens also here is that Mars from this 7th house makes its 8th aspect onto your 2nd house, wherein Saturn is right now transiting. So what does this mean basically for you is that all this kind of want of being able to communicate and being able to talk about things when it comes to your partnerships can even influence how you are kind of being able to visualize and view your values, which even come from your family. So the kind of values that you inculcate and imbibe because of how you were brought up. So there can be some sort of changes or some sort of transformations with regards to how those views kind of influence the kind of partnerships that you have at this point in your life. So it can be quite like transformative values, bringing that sort of energy into the kind of relationships that you have right now. So that sort of energy can present itself, and you also can have this sort of communicational channel actually have some sort of positive connotation when it comes to your professional prospects as well. So all in all, it's a it's an energy which kind of gives you the boost of being able to encounter certain challenges when it comes to your professional prospects as well, so without fear. So that, of course, is also prevalent here. Now, what we see next is that on the 17th of October, Sun is going to transit into the sign of Libra, and that's happening in your 11th house. And with the Sun's transit here, it's already getting conjunct Ketu, because Ketu is already transiting in the sign of Libra. What we need to understand is that Sun is basically in its debilitation in the sign of Libra, and that weakness of its significations is further exacerbated because of the fact that it is conjunct with Ketu at this point. So what does this tell us is that you can face issues with regards to how you're able to communicate with your network circle. So your network circle, how you're able to basically relate your identity with regards to a group can become a little difficult, can be a little challenging, wherein this challenge can even make you question your own identity, your own ideals, your own philosophies, and that sort of energy can come about with this. You can also face the general happening wherein the equations of equalized peace and just like general likingness of people around you can become a little sour. So you might not actually be able to enjoy people's company as much, especially when it comes to the kind of the kind of groups that you generally like to be associated with. And these can also be somehow in relation to your philosophical ideals and maybe even your philanthropic sort of undertakings. So that sort of energy presents itself when Sun is in the sign of Libra, and it's also getting conjunct with Ketu. So a lot of questioning regarding your ideals, a lot of questioning regarding how your identity is interlinked with the kind of group that you have around you, the kind of network that you have around you. So that is something that can come about. And next, what we see is that on the 18th of October, Venus is going to also conjoin in this house, in the sign of Libra. So technically, this would have been a really positive aspect because Libra is ruled by the planet of Venus. But because Ketu is already present there, so it produces a sort of dissatisfaction with the kind of identity or with the kind of equation when it comes to a general give and take of how things are happening in the group that you are around at this point. So this can make you sit back and kind of evaluate if you even see value in being able to be a part of this organization, a part of this group, a part of this network, a part of your friend's circle even. So these kind of questions can come about with this aspect, and with the transit that is taking place with Venus being present here. This can also show some sort of opportunity where you might come about on losing money because of actually following some sort of advice based on money from one of your acquaintances or one of your network circles. So that can also be something that might happen as well. So you have to be careful of not just listening to the herd of people going one way and kind of decipher how you would like to make those changes and investments rather than being influenced by people. So that is also something that you need to look out for. You also see that on the 23rd of October, Saturn is going to turn direct in the sign of Capricorn, and this is happening in your second house. So it can also show the fact that you might actually be able to communicate at work much better. So you might feel like your communication becomes more effective, especially when it comes to being able to communicate with your superiors. So that can be there. And also you can feel that you are able to sort of move out of the challenges that you were facing with regards to your familial values, with regards to your identity in relation to familial values. And that can be something that you might feel like, I'm able to reconcile with, I'm able to work towards. Also this aspect of, the whole transit of Saturn becoming direct in the sign of Capricorn. So there is a video that has been created on this channel. I will be linking that in the description box, and you will be able to see and understand how basically this will impact you. This video, basically the one that has been mentioned in the description box, is all about the kind of results which will come about because of the Saturn's transit being in the retrograde motion. But right now what you can expect is all the significations which have been mentioned in that video are all going to turn positive and more so forward moving. So it's going to turn more in favor of how you want to basically conduct those things, be it your relationships with your superiors at work, with your relationship with even the elders in your own family. So that sort of equation can come about. So definitely do check that out as well. And the thing that we also have to see here is that Saturn from your second house is putting an aspect onto your 11th house, and the second and the 11th house are both houses which are in relation to finances. So your 11th house is your house of your exponential gains, And your second house is the house of your savings. It's the house of your secured assets. So this can basically show you that, you need to be able to make a coherent choice when it comes to your finances, wherein you have a balanced approach with regards to how much you are wanting to separate your portfolio into secured assets and how much of it do you want it to be on the riskier investments. And this further gets exacerbated because Rahu is in your fifth house right now. And Rahu being there basically is sort of creating this energy wherein you feel more unconventional choices of investments are something that you're looking into. And for that, you need to be able to make a sort of, you need to have a balanced approach to be able to understand how to basically lead with not just the riskier investments, because those can actually blow up and make you, lose more money than you actually sought to make out. And you have to kind of balance that with the secured and safer assets as well. So that sort of energy presents itself. It can also show the fact that, to be able to kind of talk to your superiors with regards to, in case, let's say, your immediate network circle at your workplace is kind of, bothersome, the relations that you have with them, it would be integral for you to be able to communicate that with your superiors to basically achieve a better working equation and balance. So that is also something that can come about with the 10th aspect of Saturn onto your 11th house and all the planets that are already present there. So next what we see is on the 25th of October, Moon is going to transit into the sign of Libra. So I haven't spoken about all the other transits that Moon has been doing throughout this period of time, and that is because Moon keeps changing its sign every 2.5 days. But this transit is especially significant because it's happening in your 11th house, where already a lot of planetary energy is present. And also on the 25th, we will be seeing a solar eclipse. So what we can expect to happen, especially during this day, is all the tensions regarding this weird energy when it comes to your place within the group or your equation with your friends can actually turn quite tumultuous, wherein it starts to majorly impact your identity and how you even deal with it on an emotional level. So you can feel quite overwhelmed and impaired when it comes to these sort of equations and these sort of challenges you're facing at this point. So you need to give yourself right now a sort of breather to be able to figure out the situation and to be able to make best do with the sort of energies which are present in order to kind of resolve any conflict which is arising, which you feel like is in your hand to basically work towards and make better if possible. So that is present there. And next what we see is that on the 26th of October, Mercury is going to transit into the sign of Libra. So all the energy which was already being present there in the 11th house is further getting conjunct with Mercury moving there. And this is basically going to exacerbate all the challenging energies which were already present there. So it can lead you to have this sort of the communicational channels are going to be extremely hard to be able to maintain, to be able to work towards within this group that you have or within the friendship circle that you have, because all these kind of troubles might make you actually want to just retreat and not talk about things. But you will technically have to talk about it, but those communications are going to be extremely hard, and it might be a possibility that one of the parties is not even willing to have that communication because of whatever the hurt or the misunderstandings that have come about, which has led to this basis of this conflict or basis of this energy regarding the issues and troubles that you're facing at this point. So that is something that you also have to be wary of and to be able to kind of steer through, because it's going to sadly make all these kind of conflicts even more challenging at this point. So at the tail end of the month, on the 30th of October, we see that Mars is going to turn retrograde in your seventh house. And what this means is that all the initial drive to be able to reconcile and make peaceful situations with your partners can become quite challenging, wherein the tension can seep into the kind of communication you have with your partners, or be it romantic partners even, and it can also seep into the kind of friendships and the kind of network circle you have. So you can actually turn out to be quite combative, and you can get into this propensity wherein your words might be misconstrued or your intentions might be misjudged. So that sort of equation can also come about when Mars goes retrograde in your seventh house. So you have to be extremely careful of not letting all these troubles that you're already facing with your network circle or your friendship circle to actually impact even your romantic relationships in such a drastic way. So that is something that you might have to kind of grapple with towards the end of this period of transit. So all in all, this month, mostly your focus will be racked within the challenges that you face with regards to you, your identity in relation to the friends group, the acquaintance group that you have. You have to be able to reconcile with all the sort of conflict that is arising within your friendship and your acquaintance circle, and be able to kind of make do with how those kind of relationships are right now changing, and how basically that is even impacting your own psyche, your own vision of yourself, and your mental status as well. So this period is quite challenging for all of us. So I hope you find some sort of clarity, some sort of resolution with these conflicts and with these issues, and let me know in the comment section if any of these predictions resonated with you. And thank you so much for watching. So Capricorns, let's see for you how this period from the mid of October until the mid of November is going to turn out for you based on the planetary transits that are taking place during this month. So we firstly see that on the 16th of October, Mars is going to transit into the sign of Gemini, and this is happening in your sixth house. So what we can expect to come about from this transit is that you can actually feel invigorated to have like a sort of routine, to kind of make changes to your routine, be able to integrate different kind of passions or different kind of interests that are basically related to learning, fun, and things like that into your routine as well. So that can be something that you are right now looking at. And also you can see that you're quite devoted and driven within your workspace, wherein your presence can sometimes become very overcoming in front of all your other colleagues that you work with, and that is something that you have to be careful of. You can also kind of be expected in a way to have some sort of confrontations with your colleagues that you work with, and there can be some sort of confrontation regarding, let's say, some verbal spat that is happening because somebody kind of is jostling around and going behind your back and trying to instigate something with regards to you in a very covert manner. So that sort of thing can lead to some verbal spats between you and the people you work with. This can also show a propensity to be right now kind of looking at strengthening yourself, strengthening your body. And that is something that you can also be interested in, trying to even change up the routine of how you kind of work out or things like that can also happen. So that those kind of possibilities are there. There is also a possibility you kind of have to be careful of, which is that you don't try to take any conflict to such an extent that there are legal repercussions of it, and that is something that you have to be careful of, and just be wary of the anger you can exhibit through mainly most probably words. at this point of time against your colleagues. And yeah, so that is something that you have to look out for. Now what happens is Mars from here makes a 8th aspect onto your 1st house, where Saturn is present there at this point, transiting through the sign of Capricorn. So what does this show? Which is that you are going to feel quite invigorated when it comes to resolving conflict. So you can be quite, have this sort of feeling of bravado when it comes to overcoming anybody who's sort of challenging you or coming into your way, trying to be sly and slide in or create some sort of issues. You can be quite tenacious at this point to kind of, slay your, not in the literal sense, but, like you will fight for yourself at this point. You will be quite fearless in your disposition. This can also kind of show a possibility of you making some sort of changes or transformations in your the way you look, the way you appear. And it can also show some sort of change happening in the structure of your organization as well, which can impact you. And this can be quite an unseen sort of a change and something that can be quite transformative for you as well. So that is something that can be expected with this aspect. And next what we see is that on the 17th of October, Sun is going to transit into the sign of Libra. And this will be happening in your 10th house, wherein it will get conjunct with Ketu, which is already transiting here since a long time now. So what happens here is that Sun basically is debilitated or weakened in the sign of Libra, and being conjunct with Ketu does not serve it any well either. So what can come about here is that your general likability, your general authority can be sort of challenged at this point from not just your colleagues, even it can be challenged or questioned by your superiors. And that can, actually make it easier for people to kind of target you or to kind of, raise fingers regarding your authenticity or just like your efforts and stuff like that. And that is something that you have to be wary of. So kind of don't give others the reason to pounce at you without actually, them having any per se a reason to do so. So don't make yourself an easy target. So that can be a possibility. And these kind of troubles with the circle that you have around you, especially like the work circle, is going to even make you sometimes reconsider and question your own appeal or your own worth, basically professionally or in a team, and how you are as a superior. So that can also be something that you can feel at this point because of these kind of issues regarding networking and the people that you're working with in your workspace. Now, next on the 18th of October, we see that Venus is also transiting into your 10th house. Now, generally, this would be a positive connotation because it's moving into the sign of Libra, which is its own ruled sign. But because Ketu is present here, all the significations which would have been possible are going to turn quite opposite to what they are or could have been. So what will happen is your general likability around the workspaces might take a dip, and there can be people who can come at you regarding the general level of how you network or how efficient you are. So it will become quite difficult for you to be able to sort of make pleasant connections or have a positive repertoire with your superiors, and even alike with your the kind of people that you work with and your colleagues. So in the workspace, it's going to like make you a devil's advocate to a certain extent. So that is something that you have to kind of look out for. And there is also the possibility that the kind of money that you are making at this point can take some sort of hit right now, which is of course not favorable. But you need to kind of be wary of that and be sure to keep your be smart with how you're dealing with the people around you at this point, because it can get quite difficult, especially in the workspace. Now, what we also see is that on the 23rd of October, Saturn is going to be turning direct in the sign of Capricorn. This is happening in your first house of self. So it's quite a significant transit. Now, what happens is all the kind of troubles that you had been facing until now when the motion of Saturn was retrograde will all sort of turn positive and be more in the forward momentum. So what we can expect is there can be some sort of change with regards to how you are right now looking at yourself and how you want people to even look at yourself and consider you, especially in the professional realm. So you are going to make certain changes, and you are going to want to basically, change the perception of yourself, especially at the workplace that people have around you. So that is the sort of energy which is presenting itself. Also, there is a previous video which has been released on the channel. It will be linked in the description box, which talks about extensively when it comes to your sign, how the effects of retrograde Saturn would be. Now, you need to check that video out because all the connotations which have been discussed in that video will all basically turn opposite. So they are all going to become positive now. Rather than being challenging, it's going to be more in your benefit. So you definitely, I would urge you to check that video out as well. And what Saturn also does here is Saturn from your first house puts its 10th aspect onto your 10th house. So again, further solidifying the fact that you need to have this sort of, you need to put these efforts, and the karma right now is coming onto you with regards to how you're able to keep peace within your team and the people you work with, and how you're basically able to balance the scales with regards to all the conflict that is happening in your workspace, and how that is even tarnishing how people are perceiving you at this point, and how you can sort of change those certain things to be able to have a more favorable outcome come about. So yeah, that is the sort of signification we can expect with this aspect. Now, what happens next is on the 25th of October, Moon is going to be transiting into Libra. So I haven't discussed any particular Moon transits until now because Moon keeps changing its sign every 2.5 days. So, but this one was quite significant because it's happening on the 25th, wherein all the energy that is already being concentrated and present in the 10th house is going to basically boil over. And also we have a solar eclipse on this day. So the energies are quite intense during this day. And you have to kind of be aware of the fact that all this conflict can come to a head, and it can cause you to have almost like a emotional and mental breakdown, because it can seem quite overwhelming at this point, wherein it can feel quite dejecting to be able to, work at maybe resolving this, or just like fighting through this, or surviving whatever is happening at this point. So you need to be willing to give yourself the grace to kind of step back right now, and not be only, not let your self-worth be so intrinsically tied with your work that nothing else matters. And that is something that Capricorns can do so at times. So you need to be able to separate your work self from your general self, and that will kind of give you a much more rounded off time at this point, especially because work can be quite challenging at this point for you. So that is something that you have to look out for. And on the 26th of October, Mercury is going to be in Libra. And so this basically means all the already challenging aspects happening in your 10th house is going to be further exacerbated by Mercury's presence in your 10th house now. So what this can mean is that the general communication within your team, the general communication that could have led to conflict resolution, is going to be extremely difficult now, because Mercury is also getting conjunct with Ketu. And this is basically going to cause you a lot of difficulties when you're trying to establish communicational channels to be able to resolve conflicts, to be able to come come to a general understanding within the team with regards to whatever issues are happening or whatever dynamics are being set right now. So it can be quite discouraging even to try to even clear the air, because it's going to be extremely difficult for people to connect and be able to ideate properly. So that is a possibility which can also happen as well. So on the 30th of October, at the tail end of the month, Mars is going to turn retrograde in Gemini, and this is happening in your 6th house. So all the troubles that we were speaking about in the beginning of this prediction with regards to people at your workplace, with regards to how people are kind of the narrative people are right now going with regards to you is going to turn extremely difficult, and your workspace might feel extremely draining, and it can feel quite tedious to be able to communicate and to be able to resolve conflicts. And that is definitely something which is going to cause you even further trouble with regards to the whole work realm. So for you Capricorns, this month, your major the theme that you have to kind of look out for is your work colleagues, the kind of relationships you fester at work, and how you're able to kind of keep the peace there, and how you're able to reconcile with whatever issues come about right now with respect to you and your work authority and the work colleagues that you have. So this period particularly is quite challenging for everyone. So I hope you get some clarity on this situation and you're able to come on the other end of this period being able to learn or resolve things better. So let me know in the comment section if any of the predictions resonated with you. Thank you so much for watching. Aquarius natives, for you, how this period from the mid of October until the mid of November is going to turn out based on the planetary transits that are taking place during this month. We see that first, on the 16th of October, Mars is going to transit into the sign of Gemini, and this is happening in your 5th house. So Mars moving into your 5th house can show that you can actually become quite driven and passionate to pursue romantic relationships, and this can be like entanglements or some sort of just like very lively energy to be able to chase, to be able to pursue, to be able to just like enjoy and be passionate in your romantic relationships and be creative. So that will definitely be the theme for this Mars's transit for you. It can also have a sort of energy. This sort of energy can have a positive connotation when it comes to, in case you are a person who is into some sort of creative arts. So it can have the sort of boost of creative energy, wherein if there were any blocks which were present before in your creative process, can seem more easy to work through, and it can have very positive influences regarding your work experience as well. And what can also come about is that if you are kind of invested into some riskier investment options and methods, you can actually become quite driven to pursue them even more at this point. So if there is some sort of instrument which is a little unreliable but kind of has more gains of money associated with it, you can want to right now invest more in that. So that possibility is also present. If you do have kids, there is a possibility that you can actually have like a verbal back and forth with them, which can border on the harsher end of the spectrum, and that can lead to some conflicts as well. You can become quite full of yourself in a way, be quite assured, but still you can have the sort of air of superiority at this point to a certain extent, especially with regards to your own intelligence and creativity. So that is something that you kind of have to look out for and just be careful of, in case it doesn't tip into that negative zone of being egotistical. So those are the kind of things we can expect with this transit. We also see that Mars from the 5th house makes a 8th aspect onto the transiting Saturn in your 12th house. So what this means is that any sort of troubles with regards to, let's say, with regards to the nature of losses, monetary losses especially, is something that you have to be careful of, because the eighth aspect of Mars can, basically invigorate you to be quite fearless. But at times, you do need to be a little fearful and a little cautious, if not fearful, of, making decisions which you can't kind of take back. And in this case, that might be on the basis of what investments you're making right now, which can be quite risky. So you might actually end up losing more money than you set out to, rather than actually making a profit. So that is something that you have to kind of be careful of, to not become so full of yourself that you're not able to see that you need to have some sort of stability, some sort of secure assets as well. And that is something that can come about with this aspect. What we can also see next is on the 17th of October, Sun is going to transit into the sign of Libra, and this is happening in your 9th house. And it is going to get conjunct with Ketu, which is already present there for a long time now. So Sun is basically debilitated or weakened in the sign of Libra, and it becoming conjunct Ketu is also not a great signification. So what happens here is your relationship, especially with your father, can turn quite combative. Basically, it can make you question a lot of things about yourself. It can even make you question your own identity, how your father's values or his way of looking at certain things have influenced you so much that you can want to right now separate from that sort of construct and be able to make your own ideals when it comes to things like religion, be it philosophy, be it spirituality. So that sort of connotation can also be present here right now. And the 9th house can also represent your further educational prospects and things like that. So you might actually, if in case you are right now in midst of planning to go abroad to study, that can become quite a tedious option, wherein you sit back and kind of try to again reevaluate if you really want to do this or not. Because that possibility can come out where you feel insecure about your possibility to be able to clear certain things if you have some certain tests or something of that sort. Or if you are already present there, it can cause issues with regards to self-worth, with regards to how you are able to feel like a part of a community there. And that can make it a little difficult because it might feel quite isolating at this point. So that sort of, thing can come about with the Sun's transit here happening in the 9th house with Ketu as well. Now, next what we see is that on the 18th of October, Venus is also going to join Sun here in the 9th house. So generally this should have been technically a very positive connotation, because Venus does really well in the sign of Libra. It rules that sign. So, but what happens here actually is the fact that Venus is also getting conjunct Ketu. So all the significations of pleasantries, all the significations of positive connotations are going to turn quite opposite. So your relationships with your father are going to be quite unpeaceful. They're going to turn into these kind of fights regarding your even your moral values, even your philosophical values and things like that. So that can be a major possibility as well. And you can also be into a disagreeable instance when it comes to the kind of community you have with regards to the educational program that you're going through. So that can also make you feel quite isolated. So you can feel like you're not a part of that community, you're not a part of that group, and that will in turn make you feel quite isolated. That can make you even question your own academic abilities, and these sort of themes can come about with this transit. On the 23rd of October, next, we see that Saturn is becoming direct in your 12th house in the sign of Capricorn. So what does this say is all the kind of troubles that you might have faced until now when Saturn was in its retrograde motion are going to turn more positive and more in a more forward momentum. So what you will experience is that the kind of losses you were kind of contemplating or you were going through can take a sudden shift to be more positive in nature. And you can also see that your your ways of contemplating and kind of exploring your religious, your spiritual beliefs can turn quite substantial, and you will like gain a forward momentum regarding not being in a state of what is happening, but rather what can I do and how can I change these things. So that sort of ability can also come through. You might also technically go through certain bouts of being isolated or alienated from people. There is also a certain possibility that you have to be careful of, which is that your health might suffer a little bit because of these instances of troubles that are right now coming through for you. So be careful of not letting it impact you to an extent where it causes you bodily harm. So that is also something that you have to be careful regarding. And Saturn from here, from your 12th house, basically aspects from its 10th aspect onto the 9th house. So what does this basically tell us is that the possibility of you actually traveling and being able to explore more with regards to maybe your educational pursuits, or with regards to even your quest to adapt and change maybe your religious, philosophical and spiritual ideals, can gain momentum. And that is something that can even actually help you to be able to understand and pursue what sort of career that you would like to take on. And it can be quite like a breakthrough that you go through at this point. So that can also be something. And this traveling can also help you explore further what you would like to imbibe, which kind of culture, which kind of practices you would like to imbibe and formulate into the sort of sense of self and personality as well. And what sort of group would you like to associate yourself with. So that sort of thing can also come about when it comes to Saturn's 10th aspect onto the transiting Sun and Venus and Ketu here. So what happens next is on the 25th of October, we see that Moon is going to be transiting in Libra. And I haven't spoken about any other Moon's transits throughout this period. And that is because Moon keeps changing its sign every 2.5 days. So, but this transit was quite consequential because it's happening in your 9th house, where a lot of planetary energies are already present. And it is also the day where we are going to be experiencing a solar eclipse. So what we can expect to come about with this is that the energy is going to be quite intense, and you might feel like all the tensions might come to a head, and you actually have like a breakdown emotionally and mentally with regards to how pressurizing this sort of situation can be, wherein you don't kind of feel like you're a part of anything, and that can make you feel quite alienated. And even just the questioning of your identity when it comes to the terms of your moral, your spiritual or philosophical beliefs can be quite taxing. So that is something that you have to be kind of careful of, and not let it impact you so much that it affects you to an extent where your general functioning and your well-being is also compromised. So be careful of that. And next, what we see is on the 26th of October, Mercury is going to conjoin in this cluster of energy happening in your 9th house, and it's going to basically further create more issues and exacerbate the already present problems, because Mercury itself is also then getting conjunct in Ketu. So any sort of also romantic relationships, if you've cultivated while you're studying or going through some educational program abroad, can also come to a stalemate sort of a situation wherein you feel like it would rather be better to kind of break off than fight for certain things. That is also a possibility. And even if you have the general the kind of conflicts that might arise with the people that you're surrounded with right now, or even when it comes to your father, the communicational channels can become quite broken, and that will become extremely hard to build and to have that sort of trust to be able to communicate on these very delicate and sensitive matters. So that sort of probability is also present here. And you have to work quite hard right now to be able to achieve any positive connotations when it comes to all these aspects that we have spoken about until now, when it comes to your 9th house and all the planetary energies which are right now happening in your ninth house. So what happens at the tail end of the month is on the 30th of October, Mars is going to be retrograde in the sign of Gemini, and this is happening in your fifth house. So all the kind of risk, all the kind of unconventional sort of investments that you were making can actually turn quite against you, wherein you might lose out more money than you actually gain, and that is a possibility that you have to be wary of. And also, in the case of you actually, chasing certain people in romantic relationships, and that also not being an extremely positive influence can also come about. So you have to be careful of these things. And yeah, all in all, this period is quite challenging for everyone. And for you, the main thing that you have to kind of reconcile is anything with regards to your belief system, your religious or spiritual belief system, and the way you're able to right now even relate to your own father and his own values with regards to these things, even your educational, higher educational pursuits. And these are the things that you have to kind of work towards at this point. And I hope you're able to go through this period of time and come at the other end of it having more clarity regarding these things. And let me know in the comment section if any of the predictions resonated with you. Thank you so much for watching. Pisces, for you, how this period from the middle of October until the middle of November is going to turn out based on the planetary transits happening during this period. We see that first on the 16th of October, Mars is going to be transiting into the sign of Gemini in your fourth house. So this can mean that you might be quite interested in dealing with, things happening at home, being able to derive a lot of fun and a lot of passion and drive from your family unit, from your home. And this is quite also a positive connotation when it comes to even diversifying let's say into some sort of real estate, and you can look at certain things in significations with that as well. You can also have the sort of a possibility of having verbal spat with your family members to a certain extent regarding even some issues with the property or things like that is also something that you have to kind of look out for. And there is also the possibility that your efforts and your drive and your passion right now is very much geared towards the matters of the family and home. So that can be a possibility as well. You can also maybe connect with your mother right now, basically on the basis of her interests, on the basis of her passions, and that is also a possibility which can come about with this transit. So the other thing that we have to see here is that Mars is making an 8th aspect onto the transiting Saturn in your 11th house. So this kind of shows the fact that you can actually become quite overbearing at this point, even with your elder siblings when it comes to the matters of the home. So rather than the elder siblings taking that sort of a front and center role, it might be you who kind of takes a front and center role because of how passionate or driven you are about that particular issue that is happening at home, which might even be in per se regarding to the property that you're staying at or you're planning to acquire or something of that sort as well. So that is something that you can right now see. You can also kind of acquire some sort of property right now with regards to making it an investment and having it escalate in your portfolio. That is also a possibility as well. So next what we see is that on the 17th of October, Sun is going to transit into the sign of Libra in your 8th house. So Sun basically is debilitated in the sign of Libra, and it further kind of weakens because of the conjunction with Ketu also as well. So what do we see here is that Sun is a planet basically which is all about illumination, and 8th house is the kind of house in astrology that has a lot of hidden and mysterious connotations. So this can make you kind of be extremely hidden, be more reclusive, be more mysterious with regards to your romantic interests as well. There can be also a possibility of going through such transformative experiences or unforeseen events, which can cause a tectonic shift within the kind of dynamics you have in your romantic partnerships or even your business partnerships. So that possibility is also something that can present itself, and that can make you question your identity in relation to that partnership, and it can make you also kind of feel inadequate in that regard. It can also maybe give rise to the feelings of jealousy and possessiveness and things like that, which you have to be kind of careful of not letting it tip into the negative category of intensity of emotions and stuff like that. So that possibility is present. You can also see that if you're making some sort of investments as a couple, as a unit, as a business unit, it can be a little tumultuous to acquire those things, because eighth house being the house of profits being derived from other people's investments or other people's profits can be a little challenging for you to acquire at this point. So if you are kind of expecting some sort of property matters or some sort of investment from others which can be beneficial to you, it might be very difficult to kind of have it see through and let that process happen organically, and that can lead to a lot of conflict as well. So that is something that you have to be careful of. Now what we see next is on the 18th of October, Venus is going to transit into the sign of Libra in your 8th house. So generally this would have been a positive connotation, because Venus rules the sign of Libra. But what we see here is that it's getting conjunct with Ketu. So the kind of love or the kind of pleasure or the kind of peace that you found in your romantic relationships might become quite unsatisfying in a manner, and that can lead you to kind of take a step back even from experiencing intimacy with your partnerships and connections. So it can make you quite aloof, and it can make you quite distanced right now from all these sort of aspects. There can also be the possibility that whatever kind of investment or whatever kind of profit you're expecting from somebody, there might be some sort of secret revealed with regards to that can put a hench into your plans to actually gain profit from that sort of a venture, or be it property or whatever it is. So that is a possibility that can also represent itself, and there's a possibility that there can be quite transformative experiences happening in your romantic relationships, which actually either put an end to this or it makes you come out of it on the better side. So that probability is also present here with the Venus's transit in the 8th house, and all your intimacy issues and your intimacy generally will become quite hidden when it comes to you practicing those things with your partners and stuff like that, and it might not be necessarily for the positive. So that is also a possibility that may arise. And next, what we see is on the 23rd of October, Saturn is going to turn direct in the sign of Capricorn, and this is happening in your 11th house. So this can mean that the kind of profits that you would like to have, the kind of exponential gains that you would like to make, will basically be able to catapult you into actually achieving these things that you're looking out for. There is some sort of benefit you're kind of expecting or looking out for at this period, which I can kind of sense. And that is something that you need all the forward momentum in. And with this planet Saturn becoming direct, you will definitely receive that. So there's a forward momentum in your tries to kind of achieve these profits and to be able to make better benefits with regards to whatever investment or whatever profits you're seeking to achieve. So that sort of thing kind of shows itself. Also happening in your 11th house shows that there might be some help which might come through with your network circle or the kind of friends you have. So they can actually present a sort of opportunity for you to create a forward momentum within your want of catalyzing into higher or exponential financial gains. So that is also a possibility. There is a video that I've previously made on the channel. It will be linked in the description box, which is all about how Saturn is right now going to be behaving when it comes to its retrograde motion. So you can watch that video to understand all the significations which will arise when Saturn turns direct, because everything that is discussed in that video will all turn positive now. It will all turn in a way which is more serving to you rather than going against you. So that will have a positive connotation. So do watch that video as well. Now, what happens here also is that Saturn is going to be putting its 10th aspect onto the 8th house. So this shows that, there might be some professional, maybe, people that you meet through work or through your network circle, which can actually help you right now to be able to gain that sort of profit that you're seeking, and to be able to reconcile with any issues that you are facing with having to gain and having to make sure that you achieve that beneficial profits or that beneficial increment regarding money or regarding anything else as well. So that sort of energy presents itself with this aspect. Now, what happens next is on the 25th of October, Moon is going to be transiting into the sign of Libra. And what this tells us is that all the energy that is already present in the 8th house is going to come to a head on this day. And this is quite significant because none of the other moon's transit has been discussed for this period, because this was quite substantial, because it's going to happen with all the energy that is already being concentrated in your 8th house. And it will also be happening on the day where we are also experiencing a solar eclipse. So the energy is very, very potent, and you're going to feel it come about in a way which makes you kind of be reclusive in your emotional and your mental capacity, and be quite stealth about how you feel about these things unfolding in a way, the kind of mysteries coming about, the kind of secrets which are, opening up with regards to your process of being able to gain profits, is basically going to make you be emotionally and overwhelmed at this point. So you need to give yourself the grace to kind of step back and reevaluate and make peace with your feelings regarding these issues at this point. What we see next is on the 26th of October, Mercury is going to be transiting into the sign of Libra, and this is happening again in your 8th house. So the communication with regards to resolving conflict in basis of all the issues which have been arising until now is going to be quite difficult, because you will feel that some information is being kept from you, and it will basically make conciliation and conflict resolution become even more difficult, because both the parties will sort of be in this tussle of power wherein nobody is actually communicating what they want to, and there can be the feelings of information being withheld, which can further escalate the sort of breakdown of communicational channels which you're already facing at this point, which will further exacerbate the issues with regards to all the themes which we spoke about in the manner of all the energy being concentrated in the 8th house. So that is something that you have to kind of look out for and be wary of and careful of. So at the tail end of the month, 30th of October, Mars is going to be transiting into the sign of Gemini, but in a retrograde motion. And this means that all the sort of aspects that you were feeling in a very forward momentum in the beginning, as we spoke about, are all going to turn opposite. So it's going to be incrementally even harder for you to kind of make that peace with your family unit in regards to these profits that you're expecting, or even with regards to some sort of properties maybe that are being spoken of or being talked about in relation to your family and home. So these kind of challenges can even further create more challenges and create more verbal spats between the family members, and it's a very, very challenging time for everybody. The planetary energies are not really conducive, so I hope you can tide through this period and come on the other end of it maybe having concluded and made some sort of resolution with these things, and let me know in the comment section if any of the predictions resonated with you. Thank you so much for watching. So Aries, for you, how this period of mid of October until the mid of November is going to look like for you based on the planetary transits that are taking place during this period. We see that first, on the 16th of October, Mars is moving into the sign of Gemini. So this is happening in your third house. So what is quite a significant thing here is that Mars is a malefic planet and going into a house which basically talks about hard work, which talks about having self-assuredness about your efforts, being able to work hard about whatever goals you're trying to achieve. So both of these significations of Mars, which talks about passion and which talks about perseverance, and all of these things actually amalgamate in a really good way. So what you're going to see here is that a very positive connotation which will come about is the fact that you're going to feel extremely self-assured, confident in how you are putting efforts towards whatever goals you're trying to achieve. So that is a really good connotation, and this also is further corroborated by the fact that Rahu right now is transiting through your first house of self. So it is already giving you this feeling of being on the top of the world. So you're feeling great per se, right? Especially about yourself or about your efforts. So this is a good thing. Another thing which we can see is there is a possibility of the fact that you might have some tussle or some communicational problems with your siblings. Another important thing that we need to see is that Mars from this place is actually aspecting the Saturn. Mars's 8th aspect is all about having the bravado, having the energy or the confidence to be able to go out and look for things which are not on the surface, or some things which kind of people are not exactly sure about. So what happens here is that because of Saturn and your 10th house getting affected by it, and both of these things are significators of your work, are significators of your career. So this shows that your efforts are going to materialize into some great transformation regarding your career. You might actually have a breakthrough. Now this can be positive and negative. See, at that point you might feel that, okay, there's a sudden change that happens which can actually take you off guard, which you weren't expecting at all. But in the long run, it's going to actually impact you in a positive sense, because it's going to give a very transformational ability for you to change or be able to transcend into any other sort of work that you wish to. So that sort of a thing is a good connotation regarding that. But there are going to be some unexpected sort of changes which might come about, and it can also be regarding the sort of superiors you have at your work, or the authorities you have to report to at work. So there might be a change in that atmosphere as well. So these kind of possibilities will appear because of this transit. Now next what happens is on the 17th of October, Sun now transits into the sign of Libra in your 7th house. So what we need to understand here is that Sun actually is debilitated in the sign of Libra. It does not work well. It actually is in its weakened state. And the same sort of energies are further brought about in the 7th house, which is similar to the energies of the sign of Libra. So we already see that Sun is not in a good position here. Now what amplifies the effect of not being in a good position is the fact that Ketu, or the south node of the moon, is already transiting in the sign of Libra. So what do we see here is that all this sense of bravado, all this sense of self-assuredness that we were talking about until now, right? Which we said that, okay, you're feeling great about the efforts that you're putting in and stuff like that, will take a 180-degree turn. Why? Because there's going to be a push back and forth. Because even though you are going to be self-assured in what you're doing, there are certain aspects which you are going to feel lacking in. And these can be when it comes to the realm of your business partnerships and also your romantic partnerships. So when it comes to the efforts that you're able to put into these kind of prospects, you're not going to feel extremely assured about what role you're playing in, how much you're able to contribute. And this can actually lead you to have troubles regarding reconciliation of any, let's say, communicational channels that are actually not being able to be precise when it comes to communication with your partner. There might be misunderstandings, there might be fights which are created because of having this misbalance of power or misbalance of the sort of equation or the back and forth that is required for a relationship to thrive. So these sort of abilities are going to present, which is further going to put a damper onto how great you would have felt about your own self. So if you can completely separate your romantic relationships from your own identity, then great. But it's not really humanly possible to do so. So some or the other way, this sort of this problem that is being created right now because of the Sun and Ketu's conjunction happening in your 7th house is going to create these sort of challenges, right? So that is something that needs to be understood. Now what happens next is on the 18th of October, Venus is now transiting into the sign of Libra, again into your 7th house. Venus is actually the significator of the 7th house, which is about marriage, partnerships, romantic relationships. So technically it should have been great. But what happens here is that again, Venus is getting conjunct with the Ketu that is already transiting through Libra right now. So again, whatever kind of harmony, whatever kind of peace that you could have created in your relationships are going to be devoid of because of ego issues, because of challenges which come from power struggles, challenges which come from unbalanced scale of power, right? So you are going to feel dissatisfied, you are going to feel isolated, you are going to feel that the relationships you have become extremely challenging, more than it should be. And that is going to basically dissuade you from putting in more effort in that scenario, right? So rather than putting in your efforts into something which seems to you like a depreciating asset right now, you're going to put your efforts into something which you feel will be more consequential, which is your career, as discussed about the Gemini transit of Mars. So this is going to create further rifts into your relationships. So relationships are going to be this sort of sticklier subject. And even if you have business relationships, it's going to be difficult to see eye to eye with your business partners, to be able to have a reconciled view about what vision you have about your, let's say, whatever business you're doing or however you're going to conduct it. So basically the problem of fight between partners or the business not being able to reconcile the idea of how you would like to take things forward. So these sort of challenges will come about further and further. And this is basically going to also impact how you are able to view yourself, how you're able to view your own identity regarding things. And that is going to further make this sort of conjunction happening here even more difficult. Next, what happens is on the 23rd of October, Saturn is going to turn direct in the sign of Capricorn, right? So in your 10th house, whatever challenges were being created because of Saturn being retrograde is going to turn opposite. So all the negative connotations, all the challenges that Saturn's transit was putting you through because of the retrograde motion is going to turn positive now. So what you're going to see is all the setbacks that you had in your career are going to start to dissipate, because all the challenges and the lessons you learned during that time is going to make you be able to turn it into fruition regarding whatever prospects you have for your career or your work and things like that. So another interesting thing that happens here is Saturn is going to put its 10th aspect onto Sun, which is transiting in the sign of Libra. So Saturn's 10th aspect is all about your work, is all about your karma, is all about the career that you're indulging in. So this further talks about the fact that though Saturn does really well in the seventh house, right? It gets exalted in that place. But the problem here is Saturn is not in the seventh house, right? It's Saturn aspecting the seventh house where its mortal enemy Sun is right now transiting through, right? And it is also going to then further put its aspect and aspect on Venus. But right now we especially want to talk about Sun because Sun is already debilitated. Putting and having that aspect of Saturn come onto it is going to prove even more challenging when it comes to how you're dealing with your colleagues, how you're dealing with your romantic partners, how this power struggle between what efforts you're going to put into your work, what efforts are you going to put into your partnerships, be it romantic or business, are going to actually bring about this very weird dynamic wherein everything sort of seems to be very challenging, more challenging than it has to be, because of miscommunication, because of misunderstandings, because of just feeling dissatisfied with whatever is happening in that zone. So all in all, Sun, which is a significator of your personality, it is a significator of your soul in astrology, is going to feel extremely dejected because of all these challenges that are coming about. So this is a little particularly difficult transit, a number of cluster of transits that are happening right now, which you need to be careful about. Also, if you need to understand how Saturn coming out of its retrograde motion is going to basically impact you, there is a video that has been uploaded on the channel, which I'll be putting in the description box, which talks in detail about how the retrograde motion of Saturn would affect you. So however, whatever significations have been given in that video is everything has to be turned opposite. So whatever was challenging before is going to become more forthcoming now. But even though we have to still consider that Mars is putting its eighth aspect onto the Saturn, right? So, and Mars and Saturn are again not planets which are cohesive. They are again enemy planets. They have very different connotations. So all in all these kind of aspects are putting challenging, planets are putting challenging aspects on each other. And moreover, Mars and Saturn are in a 8th and 6th aspect relationship, because Saturn is right now 8 places away from Mars, and Mars is right now 6th place away from Saturn. And that is not a great signification when it comes to understanding how planets work in astrology, because it's a very malefic sort of impact that might be created. So there might be this sort of unequal representation of how hard you're working at your career right now, and how much breakthrough are you actually being able to produce with the amount of efforts, with the amount of hard work you're able to do right now. And that challenge can actually maybe even cause you to have a verbal spat with people around you. So you have to be also careful of how you're communicating your ideas, and you have to be careful of not actually let your blood boil soon enough that it turns into a situation which is harder to control later. So next what happens is on the 25th of October, Moon transits through the sign of Libra. Now I haven't spoken about any other particular moon transits in this month especially, because the most important transit which will be happening is this, because this leads to the solar eclipse as well. So Moon is the significator of the mind, right? And now this is going to transit from the 7th house with all of these cluster of energies which are basically not very positive. And Ketu is already present there, which is the south node of the moon. So it is going to impact all this tension, all this challenge, all this basically steam, and all this basically the energy that is being created in this house is going to implode and explode on the 25th of October. And it is going to basically feel like all of this has come onto a headway where it's going to burst finally. So you might have an emotional breakdown because of whatever is happening at that period of time, whatever is leading up to that transit. So that is again something you need to stay vigilant about. You have to give yourself that sort of place where you can sit back, try to evaluate what is happening rather than wanting to control and wanting to make sure everything turns according to how you want it to. So even though you want to seek peace, peace is not what you will get. So you have to be careful regarding that and be kind to yourself. Now what happens next is on the 26th of October, Mercury is going to transit into Libra. Now Mercury generally, when it would have transited into Libra, would have been a good transit, because Mercury does really well in the 7th house of, business transactions and stuff like that. But again, as I mentioned before, Ketu is already present here. So whatever communicational channels you could have created to be better at expressing your ideas, to be better at expressing your love even to your partner and your ideas, to your business partnerships and stuff like that, is all going to turn opposite. So you're going to find extremely difficult to be able to see eye to eye with the people when it comes to communicational channels that you have created. So which will lead to even more further problems when it comes to, having that scale be balanced, the Libra scales be balanced. So further destruction created all in all about the relationship, how you're handling it, how you're able to communicate about the problems which are being created right now. So it's a very testy time for relationships to come about in your life. And this is something you need to be careful about. You need to make sure you're putting efforts into your relationship. Otherwise, it's not going to survive. It's going to be quite difficult to not feel dissatisfied and just disconnect. So that is something that needs to be considered. And at the tail end of this month, on the 30th of October, Mars, which was transiting in Gemini, is going to turn retrograde. So it's now going to cause even more issues. So rather than you now feeling at the top of the world in the beginning of the month, let's say beginning, which is like the middle of the month, where you felt self-assured, is going to turn exactly opposite, where you are now going to be filled with doubts regarding what is it I'm doing, how is my effort actually manifesting, even when it comes to your career, even when it comes to your romantic relationships. And that is going to make a huge impact into how you're able to reconcile and look at yourself when it comes to the efforts and the fruition of efforts that you're looking forward to. And that is basically going to impact even how you look at yourself and how you're able to communicate and how you're able to ideate in your relationships, be it your work relationships or your romantic relationships. And you're going to even feel more further disconnected, and you might be more disassociated from your communication. So you can feel quite aloof and not basically responsive to having communications to dissipate all the tension that is being created. So this basically all in all is going to be the energy that is going to stir the pot for you during this period from the 15th or the 16th of October up until almost the 16th of November, where other planets then start changing signs, and then further difference will happen in these planetary energies. So stay connected with your partnerships. Be careful of how you're communicating, how much energy you're putting into your relationships to be able to cultivate them, to be able to nourish them. I hope you're able to get through this period of time with your relationships intact. And let me know in the comment section if any of these predictions have resonated with you. Thank you so much for watching. Taurus, for you, let's see how this period of mid of October until the mid of November is going to turn out for you based on the planetary transits that are taking place during this period. So firstly, on the 16th of October, Mars is going to transit into the sign of Gemini in your second house. Basically means that the energy of being focused and ideating about how you would like to save your financial resources, and how you would like to maximize your financial security is going to be your topmost priority. And that is something that's going to be where maximum of your efforts are going to be channelized, wherein you will come up with ideas to be able to maximize on your monetary savings, on your monetary security. And this is basically going to be the major coming about when it comes to this transit. Also, another thing that you would have to be careful about is when it comes to your eating habits. You have to be careful because Mars coming into your second house can actually show the propensity to indulge in food habits which might not be as positive to you. So that is something that you need to be careful about. You have to be cautious regarding how your diet is impacting your overall health. And you also might have to face some heated vocal arguments with your family members on basis of what values you're basically holding as a family unit. So that is something again that you have to keep in mind and be able to positively manifest rather than have it destructively culminate in this energy. Now the next thing that happens is that with this Mars's transit in the second house, it's going to put its 8th aspect onto the transiting Saturn, which is in your 9th house right now. So this is right now retrograde. It's going to turn direct, but right now, as of now, it's retrograde. So what do we see here is that all the money talk, all the talk about how you're able to generate, how you're able to save, how you're able to stabilize your monetary income is basically going to impact your chances of being able to firstly travel, if that is something that you would like to do. Second, achieve a further higher education if that is what you're interested in. And third, it is also going to be quite integral when it comes to your spiritual and philosophical ideals. So this money concentration on the aspects of money is going to even impact how you're right now looking at your spiritual, religious or philosophical ideals. So it's that sort of impact which is going to happen. And this also impacts the luck that you're right now experiencing in your career, because of having this retrograde transit of Saturn, it would have been a little difficult to manifest luck with the efforts that you're putting into your work prospects. So this basically is the 8th aspect of Mars is going to make a breakthrough or some sort of unexpected transformation, which is going to change these things, which is going to transform the ability for you to achieve these things, to be able to be satisfied with these things, to be able to put effort into achieving these things. So that is something that will also take place with this Mars's transit. Now the next thing which happens is that on the 17th of October, Sun is going to transit into the sign of Libra, which is your 6th house. Now what we need to understand is that Sun is actually debilitated in the sign of Libra. It does not work well. It is weakened in the sign of Libra. So what happens here is already Sun is at a disadvantage, which is further magnified by the prospect that Ketu, or the south node of the moon, is already transiting through the sign of Libra. So all of this energy happening in your 6th house, which is relating to your work, your career, it is also relating to any sort of enemies that you might have with regards to, let's say, your workplace, and even maybe some legal issues that you might be able to encounter because of, workplace politics or whatever it is. So this basically means that your identity, your own personality that you project or you're able to cultivate and prove at work is going to seem quite distracted. It's going to seem quite devoid of the actual energy that you would be able to put into connecting, into networking with people at your workplace. So it's going to basically create the feelings of disconnect with the people you work. It's going to create the feelings of dissatisfaction with the work that you're doing, with the routine that you're keeping, with the health prospects that you have right now. So this basically is going to come at a headway because of this transit which is taking place and the impact that Ketu is right now having on Sun transiting through here. So all the challenges regarding work are going to bring about the sort of dissatisfaction that you have regarding the work that you're doing or the people that you're working with. So which is going to basically create this sort of unequal shift in the scales of how things are happening at your workplace. So you might actually stir up some, the pot of being able to actually exterminate yourself from work. You might actually become quite serious regarding leaving whatever work prospects that you have at this point if you are that dissatisfied with the work that you're doing right now or the people that you're with. Now what happens next is that on the 18th of October, Venus is going to transit into the sign of Libra. Now Venus generally works really well in the sign of Libra, but Venus does not work well in the 6th house, and that is because it has similar energies to Virgo, right? And Virgo is where Venus is debilitated. So generally Venus does not do well in the 6th house. And this is further exacerbated by the fact that your ascendant lord, because you're a Taurus native, is Venus. So which means your ascendant lord is right now transiting through your 6th house. So already that is another problem which is being created. And on top of that, Ketu is already present there. So this amalgamation of energy is going to create even further dissatisfaction, even further misconstruence of whatever events are happening at your workplace to make you feel so dissatisfied and disconnected that even the smallest of things are not going to feel great to you at this point. Everything is going to seem quite meaningless, so as to say. And this is going to even impact your romantic relationships because you cannot completely exterminate one part of your life and not let it impact anything else. So all this challenge regarding your workplace, the politics that people might be playing behind your back, and the kind of equations that are being created at work are basically going to make you feel extremely dissatisfied in other aspects of your life also, which basically boils down to your romantic relationships. So you might become actually quite critical of the relationships that you have cultivated until now, and you might actually also have health issues which can create further dissatisfaction with whatever efforts you're able to put into your work. It can make you, or your romantic relationships, so it can make you feel even further distanced from all of these prospects where you feel that you have nothing to give anymore. So that sort of feeling might cultivate itself because of these transits that are happening right now. And what happens next is that on the 23rd of October, Saturn is going to turn direct in the sign of Capricorn in your 9th house. So as I said, all the challenges that you were facing regarding prospects of actually being able to go abroad, travel to long distance travels, having to, go through procedures of being able to apply or even materialize your wants of having a higher educational degrees, and also just the challenges that you're facing with your own religious, spiritual or philosophical beliefs are all going to sort of start to turn more positive, more forward in its motion, because this period of whatever Saturn's challenges were being created is now, whatever lessons you've learned from that period of time is basically going to turn everything into fruition, of how your karma is going to materialize in these prospects. So that is something that will supposedly take place in construence to Saturn going in the positive or the direct motion in the sign of Capricorn. So this can also be quite positive when it comes to the fact that you might actually have a lucky disposition when it comes to your dealings with your superiors. So they might actually still have like a positive impact regarding you. They might actually see the positive in you, even if the people around you are sort of, your own colleagues are sort of back bitching or are sort of creating this very toxic environment for you. Maybe your superiors are going to look out for you during this time. So that is something that can also be a prospect to take about when it comes to Saturn's transit. Now, what also happens here is that Saturn is now going to put its 10th aspect onto the 6th house. And especially in the 6th house, we're going to talk about Sun, because Sun is already debilitated in the sign of Libra. So it's already at a disadvantage. And on top of that, being aspected by its mortal enemy is going to turn even more challenging. So what is going to happen here is the fact that, as I said before, you might actually get the good graces of your superiors right now. So very weirdly, you might feel that someone who's superior to you or people who are elder to you basically are going to support you, are going to be the force behind your luck at this point when it comes to the challenges that you're facing at your workplace. This deep dissatisfaction with the work that you're doing right now, with the fulfillment of the work prospects or the career prospects that you're having right now, is going to turn even worse because of this aspect. Because Saturn's 10th aspect is all about your work, is all about your karma, and it's happening within this debilitated Sun. So all of this is going to impact your soul, it's going to impact your personality. So you might actually become quite combative. You might actually turn around and give people the medicine that they have been injecting into you. So all these people who are plotting against you, you can actually turn quite combative regarding that. So that is something you need to be careful about, because that is also further corroborated by Mars's transit that is happening in your 2nd house. So you can become quite combative right now. So that is something you have to be careful about, not to let it manifest negatively in this regard. Now what happens next is on the 25th of October, Moon is going to transit in the sign of Libra. I have not spoken about any other transits of the Moon, and that is because this is going to be the specific transit of Moon which is quite consequential, because it's happening in your 6th house and is going to be conjunct all the other planets that are already transiting there, but more so with Ketu, which is the south node of the Moon. And this is going to basically cause about a solar eclipse as well. So what happens here is the fact that all of this tension regarding work, all of this tension regarding maybe some legal aspects or issues that you have or have been created because of your work challenges are going to come at a headway. And this is going to cause a sort of emotional meltdown, wherein everything becomes so overwhelming that it starts to impact your emotions and your mind, because Moon represents that in astrology. So that's going to basically be quite negatively connotational to you. So you might have these sort of feelings of disconnecting with all the drama in your life right now, trying to escape whatever troubles or issues that you're facing right now, regards to your work environment, regards to your romantic relationships. And all of this is going to turn into this huge cluster of emotions where everything seems more amplified than it already is. So this is the kind of time period where you have to look out for yourself, and you have to take a step back and kind of make your own mental health your first priority. And that is even going to turn quite significant because of the fact that, your ascendant lord is also here. So this connection of mind and your matter is going to be extremely important for you to look out for and to be extremely vigilant regarding. Now next what happens is on the 26th of October, Mercury is also going to transit into the sign of Libra. Now, generally, Mercury in Libra is a good connotation because it shows that your communicational channels when it comes to peacekeeping and when it comes to networking abilities would be great. But as I mentioned before, Ketu is already present here. So all of those positive connotations are going to turn quite opposite. So your ability to be able to communicate about the issues that you're facing at your work with your colleagues, your ability to be able to ideate regarding how to dissipate these issues at work or these issues when it comes to your legal challenges are all going to turn extremely difficult for you to right now bear with. So this is going to further create even more issues regarding how you're able to communicate with your colleagues, how you're able to communicate regarding your problems with your romantic partners. And all of this is again going to impact the already malefic sort of energies which are present in these areas and these realms for you right now during this period. Next, at the tail end of the month, on the 30th of October, Mars is going to turn retrograde. So to put the cherry on the top, all of this was not sufficient and Mars is then going to turn retrograde. So all the positive connotations that were present up until now are going to turn opposite. So you have to be extremely careful of how you're looking out for your financial security, how you're looking out for being able to maximize on your financial savings. You are also going to have to look out for the prospect of creating more issues for yourself because of miscommunicating, because of being combative and creating scenarios which are going to then become out of control for you. And this is also going to turn your relationships with your family even further, combative and more challenging. So all in all, this is quite a hard time to tide through. I hope you're able to come out of this period and look at it as have created something positive at least. Let me know if any of the predictions have resonated with you. Thank you so much for watching. So Gemini, let's see how this period of mid of October until the mid of November is going to be for you based on the planetary transits that are taking place during this period. So the very first thing we see is that on the 16th of October, Mars is going to transit into the sign of Gemini. This transit is happening in your first house. So what does this basically show us is that you are right now going to be extremely focused on changing some things about your physical appearance and in general trying to adopt a more healthier lifestyle, a more active lifestyle. So you can kind of make the changes that lead you to have a different sort of appearance than you usually have and a different sort of demeanor or personality in general. So this sort of energy to create that sort of a different persona or a different identity can be something that can be seen during this transit period of Mars in the sign of Gemini. And the other thing we can also see is that you can actually get quite inquisitive about a varied or lots of different vocations or lots of different diverse interests, and you can want to research more about different things, want to be involved in different things when it comes to honing your personality or making certain changes in the way you want people to perceive you. So you can want to kind of expand your horizons by getting to know more about a lot of things, juggling a lot of interest at one time and kind of trying to elevate how your personality is and how people perceive you. So that is also something that you can be quite interested in and invigorated to approach and follow through. And another thing that we can see is that because the sign of Gemini and even the third, like it's all about communication, how you're connecting with different people. So this urge to connect with people, this urge to be able to communicate with people is going to be quite prevalent, but you also have to be careful of the fact that you can get into these kind of fights, maybe we can say, or we can just simply chalk it up to be like your communication can be quite harsh or direct during this period of time. So that is something that you need to look out for in case you want to not have as many fights or disagreements with people around you right now. And these can generally come about where people can actually criticize how you are conducting yourself. You might come across as quite brash or quite egotistical. So people might, kind of approach you regarding that, and that can lead to a verbal spat. Things of that sort. So this is the kind of thing that you can see when Mars is traveling and transiting through your first house. Another thing which is important to notice here is that Mars from your first house is going to put its 8th aspect onto the Saturn in your 8th house. So which means that all these kind of lessons that you have been getting regarding these sudden unexpected kind of events that are happening regarding mainly your career, and all these lessons and attributes that you had to learn because of the kind of trials and tribulations that Saturn right now is putting you through in terms of your career, where you will sort of get a burst of energy wherein you will want to overcome all of these challenges and want to kind of change the tide of things, how they are kind of panning out in your career. So that sort of burst of, being able to overlook your fears and being able to actually implement on the lessons that you've learned during this retrograde period of Saturn is going to be quite instrumental also with the 8th aspect of Mars on your transiting Saturn. So that is also something which is quite instrumental. Now, what happens next is that on the 17th of October, Sun is going to transit into the sign of Libra in your 5th house. Now, generally, Sun rules the 5th house and the 5th zodiac sign of Leo. So, technically, we should have observed a great significance of energy when it comes to Sun's transit through the 5th house. But what happens here is two things. First, Sun is transiting through the sign of Libra, which is its debilitation sign. So it feels weakened in the sign of Libra, first. And second is that the south node of the moon, or Ketu, is already transiting for a long period of time right now in the sign of Libra. So Sun is going to get conjunct with the energies of Ketu as well as be in its debilitated sign. So which clearly shows us that all the significations of Sun are going to right now be affected. So rather than feeling quite self-assured and rather than feeling that you having that sort of confidence within yourself, you can come across this sort of feeling where you're quite unsure regarding especially how your identity ties in with the sort of romantic relationships you kind of have in your life at this point. So it can become like a tussle between your perceived personality and how you sort of relate to that and your identity in regards to the relationships you have in your life. And it's not just romantic relationships, it can also be business relationships. So that is something that you can kind of be at odds with. You can also sort of feel a bit of alienation in the relationships you cultivate, which is sort of going to lead you to take a step back from whatever efforts you're kind of pouring into these relationships and kind of take a step back and fall back more onto just thinking about yourself and how you want to better yourself and or how you want to kind of create a better version of yourself. You can be dissatisfied with the version of you right now indulging in whatever relationships you have at this point. So that is something that can come about and which can lead to this sort of comeuppance of disputes or just misunderstandings when it comes to relationships. And this is further going to corroborate the whole aspect of Mars transiting through your first house and you wanting to just right now focus on yourself and making yourself better at this point. So that is something that you will have to make peace with at this point. And just even the factor of that fun quotient or the romance that you want, or is that something that you have experienced in these relationships, is sort of going to feel quite drab. It's not going to feel as effervescent or invigorating as it would usually. So all of these things in tandem are going to sort of escalate you to detach yourself from relationships and how you perceive your identity through relationships in your life, and kind of take you towards the extreme end of being completely focused on yourself and just right now wanting to not give any efforts into the relationships you cultivate in your life, but more so on just cultivating a better sense of self within yourself. So that is something that we can see with this transit as well. Now, next, what happens on the 18th of October is that Venus also joins the Sun in the 5th house in the sign of Libra. So Venus works wonderfully in the sign of Libra. It's the sign that it owns, and typically it should have worked well. And also because the 5th house is the house of romance, the significations of Venus would have thrived. But as I mentioned in the transit happening prior to this, which is the Sun's transit, this is again getting conjunct the south node of the moon, which is Ketu. So this is further going to escalate the feelings of dissatisfaction in relationships, the feeling of alienation of romance in relationships, and it can also maybe lead to this weird triggering of karmic relationships and karmic bonding in relationships. So that sort of relationship or equation can also come forth, wherein you are still dissatisfied with whatever kind of bond you have, but it kind of feels like it's fated. So you have to sort of just look at it and kind of see how it's going to turn out. That sort of a feeling that this is a fated event to happen, bound to happen in this relationship that you are with that person. So that is something that you can also experience. And because Venus is also a significator of money, and the 5th house is also related to the investments that you make in riskier instruments. So let's say generally like in stock markets, and maybe also let's say in cryptocurrencies, things like that. So because of Venus going into this house and Ketu already being present there, so you might find it difficult to be able to make the profits that you expect out of these instruments. So it can lead you to actually, rather than earning that amount of money, to rather be losing that money and not being able to make the profits that you wanted to when you invested that amount of money. So that is also something that can be a possibility here. Also, if you are a parent and you have children, so this triggering of your 5th house can also lead to the relationship that you have with your offspring or your children to kind of become strained, wherein you might disagree more, there might be more misunderstandings, and the whole relationship can get quite tedious and difficult. So that is also something that you have to be wary of and kind of look out for in case you want to rectify that and work towards creating a more peaceful and structured and balanced sort of an environment with your children. So the next thing that we see here is that on the 23rd of October, Saturn is going to turn direct in the sign of Capricorn. And this is going to be happening in your 8th house. So what happens here is that all these trials and tribulations back and forth regarding the uncertainty that you're currently facing in your career prospects and how your career is sort of panning out to be right now, you're going to feel a sense of relief when it comes to being able to have a hold on the sort of tides of unexpected changes that you're facing right now. So you can feel that rather than you regressing in your professional prospects, you can feel a more so forward motion with whatever plans you have regarding your work prospects. So that is something that you can also see. You can also feel that with whatever lessons you've learned over the period of this retrograde transit, that you're able to cultivate and use those lessons into actually transforming the way you're kind of looking at your prospects within your career and how you're able to catapult that into maybe something much varied from where you are right now. And that is something that is also further corroborated and supported by, as mentioned before, the Mars transit in your first house. So it can give you that sort of push to be able to change with the times of whatever notions are happening in your career right now, which are quite unexpected to say the least. And but with that, there is also a sort of fear that's kind of feels like it's holding you back in a way, wherein you know that there is this precipice of transformation and change that you're currently at, but that is also something that to take that initiative, to take the fall and like jump towards that uncertainty and to be able to jump towards that transformational energy is something which can be a little scary. It can be fearful. So that is something that you can also experience right now. And this whole prospect will further be also impacting your relationships, because Saturn from your 8th house is going to put its 10th aspect onto your 5th house. So basically your Sun, Venus, and finally when Mercury moves there, then Mercury as well. But what I preferably want to first discuss is the aspect of Saturn on Sun, because these are two enemy planets. So what happens here is that whatever uncertainty is being caused in your professional prospects is leading you to actually be more isolated and more wary of even your relationship. So all the energy that is uncertain at this point within your career is kind of foreshadowing also the relationships you have in your life. And this is going to cause the peacekeeping or the peacemaking of the relationships you have to be even more difficult. So all in all, this aspect of 5th house having to deal with Ketu's placement already there, then also having to have the Saturn's 10th aspect there, is going to be quite challenging when it comes to your relationship, be it romantic, be it business, and also your relationship with your children. So this is something that you have to be kind of wary of, and you have to look out for in case, there's some kind of effort that you would like to put to make any changes in these situations. And this can also maybe lead to some insecurities regarding the intimacy that you experience in your relationships, and can create issues which further exacerbate the already worsening situation when it comes to relationships in general for everybody this month. And what happens next is that on the 25th of October, Moon is going to be in the sign of Libra. So I have not discussed any other particular moon transits throughout this prediction, which is because Moon keeps changing its sign every 2.5 days. So it's not going to stay static for us to sit and discuss. But this particular transit is important because it's going to happen again in the 5th house in the sign of Libra. And it's going to be conjunct its own south node or south node, yeah. So what comes about here is that all this tension regarding relationships, all this tension regarding the equations that you have with your children is going to come to a head, and it's going to be this Mars the emotions that you have around this kind of turmoil is going to boil over, and you're going to feel all the feels at this point, wherein you kind of everything, the effect of everything that's going on within your life at this point, especially with regards to your intimacy, romantic relationships, your romance, and even let's say your financial prospects, is all going to boil over, and it's going to completely impact your mind and your emotions, because that is what moon signifies in astrology. So you have to kind of give yourself the grace to sit back and kind of evaluate and resuscitate whatever is happening, and make a decision as to, how would you like to move forward. Do you want to put efforts into whatever is right now not going for you, or would you just like to be okay with it and move forward with either severing those connections or either trying to resuscitate them. So that is something that you can face during this particular moon's transit. Now next, what we see is on the 26th of October, Mercury is going to transit into the sign of Libra, and this is again going to happen in your 5th house. Because of Ketu being present here, all of that is going to go towards the opposite end, wherein you feel dissatisfied with the communication that you're having with your children. You will feel dissatisfied with the communication that you're having with your business and romantic partners, and this communicational lag is going to cause even further exacerbation of all the troubles that are already being present here. You can feel indecisive, you can feel quite basically flustered with whatever is happening within these relationships in your life. So it's going to kind of escalate and escalate until up to a breaking point. So that is something that you again have to look out for, and that is something that you have to kind of figure out a way to get through and be able to understand how to move forward with that. Now, what happens next is on the 30th of October, at the tail end of the month, Mars is going to be retrograde in the sign of Gemini. And this basically has all the connotations that we discussed in the beginning of the video are all going to turn opposite. So you can sort of become you can become not confident about your abilities, or how you think people perceive you, or how you kind of even look at your own personality, your own appearance. You can become quite self-doubt can kind of cloud your judgment, and that is something that you have to kind of be wary of and be aware of, because this sort of feelings can come about, and your communication can become even more erratic and even more violent. So this sort of energy can be experienced with all of these transits that are happening. But I really hope you will be able to tide through this and come out of it on the other side, maybe having made better decisions, or have had better clarity regarding these situations. So please let me know if any of the predictions resonated with you, and leave your experiences in the comment section. And thank you so much for watching. So Cancers, for you, how this period from the mid of October until the mid of November is going to turn out for you, based on the planetary transits that are taking place during this period. We see that first, on the 16th of October, Mars is transiting into your 12th house, into the sign of Gemini. So what this basically means is that your energy and all your focus is going to mostly now be turning towards resting and recharging, and your desire to travel and to explore can become something that is right now at the forefront of your mind, and that is something that you would like to indulge in. Also, because the 12th house is related to the house of losses, so there is also the possibility that in case you are making some monetary investments, there can be a chance of you having to face some sort of losses right now. And this can also be on the other end relating to, maybe let's say, something towards the extent of you not feeling really well, and that sort of culminating into some loss of monetary some loss of money because of the fact that you would have to get a consultation from a doctor or something of that sort. So there's a possibility of that happening as well. Now what also we can expect is that, because the 12th house is the house of bed pleasures, so the intimacy that you have with your partners can actually take a rise, and it can be something that you indulge in more so. And what we can also see, that your interest with regards to spirituality and healing can be something that you're willing to explore, willing to understand more about, and getting to know more in depth about the knowledge and the factors behind how to practice those things. So that is also something that you can be looking at, and this is further substantiated also because Jupiter right now is in retrograde in your 9th house of your culture, of your religion, of your spirituality. So you're right now grappling with the sort of the way you're right now looking at your identity and how that basically ties in with your philosophical ideals, spiritual ideals, religious ideals. Hence, this sort of thing gets even further exacerbated because of this Mars's transit happening right now. Also, this sort of whole culmination of energy comes about with the Mars's transit in your 12th house. Now, what happens is, from here, Mars is going to put an 8th aspect onto the transiting Saturn in your 7th house. 7th house is the house of your romantic partnerships. It's also the house of your business partnerships. So Mars in the house of losses, putting its 8th aspect, which can talk a lot about transformations, which can talk a lot about sudden changes and things like that. So what can happen is that something with regards to how you are right now pursuing your different ideas in relation to your philosophical, spiritual, religious ideals is kind of also impacting how you are viewing your own partnerships. And that can also kind of help you, or maybe basically catapult you. This whole ideal and the kind of exploring you're doing is basically kind of catapulting you to even have a different outlook towards your partnerships and how you kind of basically relate with people as well. So that is something that can come about as well. And if you have any underlying tensions with the kind of romantic relationships or business relationships you have, this sort of transit of Mars and its 8th aspect can give you the kind of bravado or the kind of I think I would say self-assurance to be able to actually tackle these things and be able to weather the storms of any unexpected changes or some trials and tribulations which will come about because of these transits. So that is something that can be considered as a positive here. So the next thing is that on the 17th of October, Sun is transiting into your 4th house in the sign of Libra. So Sun basically, what needs to be considered is that Sun is debilitated in the sign of Libra. And also on top of that, it is getting conjunct Ketu, which is already transiting in your 4th house. So, and Ketu is the south node of the moon. So what happens here is that technically all the positive significations of this transit get sort of disturbed because of the Ketu's presence in this house. So what can come about now is that all the familial relations that you have at home can feel strained right now, and the scales of peace and just a normal like sentience and the kind of bonds that you have at home can feel a little tattled, and there can be arguments that can arise. There can be some sort of basically conflict which can even inflict such sort of harm to even your own sense of being that you start to question your own self and your own contribution to your familial unit. So that sort of energy kind of presents itself because of this transit and the impact of Ketu being conjunct here. It can also create some sort of doubts about the love and the worth that you kind of seek from your home and family. So these sort of doubts and these sort of identity kind of crisis can come about in relation to how you sort of relate to your place in the family and home, and also how you relate to their kind of presence in your life. So this kind of misjoint kind of back and forth push and pull of these kind of feelings of invalidity and the feelings of just like unpeaceful conflict resolution. So whenever you would want to even sort of kind of broach the subject, it kind of does not go how you would want it to. So that sort of feeling can come about, and it can also want you to basically develop feelings of seclusion and wanting to kind of be away and separate yourself from your home and the kind of troubles that you're right now going through with the conflicts at home. So what happens next is on the 18th of October, Venus is going to also come about in your 4th house and in the sign of Libra. So technically this would have been a great transit because the sign of Libra is ruled by Venus. But what happens again here, just as it happened in the case of Sun, it also is getting conjunct with Ketu in the 4th house. So what happens is all the cordial relationships and love within your familial unit starts to get lost. It starts to feel very vacant, and the feelings of dejection and the feelings of not being satisfied with how your dynamics at home are right now festering and how they are basically manifesting is something that you can come about and feel at this point. And also, if there are any prospects in relation to, let's say, your thoughts of refurbishing or any thoughts of beautifying your home in some sort of way, is something that might not really be possible at this point, because even though there might be a want of doing these things, but the circumstantial events that are happening right now are not conducive to for you to actually take on such projects at this point. So I wouldn't say that it is very recommended for you to kind of work at your home as in on your home in regards to, changing some certain things about your home. I don't think this is the right time for you to kind of take on such a project. And also all of these kind of events are kind of catapultizing and tantalizing and, finally kind of moving into you having further the feelings of isolation and alienation within your family and your home unit. So all in all, it's quite a challenging period with regards to your home and how you're basically going to find the love and peace within your family. So it's going to be a challenge right now. Next, what happens is on the 23rd of October, Saturn is going to become direct in the sign of Capricorn in your 7th house. So until now, whatever kind of challenges that Saturn was putting you through because of being in a retrograde motion is all basically sort of going to start to resolve itself, and you're going to start to feel a forward momentum with regards to things when it comes to, let's say, your romantic partnerships and even your let's say your business partnerships as well. So all the kind of lessons that you've learned during this retrograde period of Saturn is basically what is going to culminate into you having to move forward in these kind of spaces of your business or your romantic partnerships. I have also discussed this transit in detail, and that video will be linked in the description box. You can definitely check that out. So all the kind of significations which have been discussed in that video regarding the retrograde Saturn's impact on your sign, all of it basically will now turn opposite and basically be more positive and more forward momentum based. So everything that has been discussed, the opposite of it is basically going to culminate right now. But there are certain things which we still need to discuss, as we said in the beginning that, Mars is still putting the 8th aspect onto your Saturn here, and we discussed that. And another thing which is happening here is Saturn from your 7th house is going to put its 10th aspect onto your 4th house, right? And in your 4th house, at this point, we already have your Sun, Your Venus and Ketu is already present there. So what happens here is the fact that professionally, the kind of relationships you have can start to thrive, because what generally happens is, if you kind of are lacking in one part of of your life, there is some, let's say, if the family equation is kind of not being conducive, you kind of retreat from that in a way, and put your energies into something else. So that sort of energy is basically exhibiting itself with this aspect of Saturn putting its 10th aspect onto the 4th house. But what also we need to take into account is the fact that Sun and Saturn are basically enemy planets in astrology. So what happens is, all the kind of professional efficiency and the professional right now, comeuppance that you feel regarding all your work prospects and things can help you to kind of weather the storms that are coming about in your home and familial equations. But you will also still need to feel the need to be able to dedicate some energy into your home as well, because the situation otherwise is not going to resolve itself. So that is something that you have to look forth for. And you have to kind of balance the scales of what you're going to be presenting and giving at your work with what you're going to be presenting and giving at your home as well to your family. So that sort of balance needs to be created, because the 7th house and the sign of Libra, so the scales need to be balanced with regards to your family and home as well as with your work equation. So you need to kind of be able to balance those two things, which is extremely important, and which is basically the underlying theme of the kind of struggles and the kind of energies that you need to resolve during this period. And what we see next is on the 25th of October, Moon is going to come into the sign of Libra. And I've not discussed Moon's transit throughout the whole month, because it keeps often changing its sign and every like 2.5 days. But this is quite substantial because it's happening in your 4th house with all the other planetary transits already happening. And when it comes about in your 4th house, it gets conjunct with its south node. And also on the 25th, there's an eclipse of Sun happening in your 4th house. So these kind of energies sort of exacerbate and detonate at this point, wherein all this kind of struggle and back and forth is kind of making you to become very emotionally subdued and basically emotionally disturbed because of all these events that are taking place at your home, especially also because you're a Cancer native, which is ruled by the planet of Moon. This is going to really affect your emotions and your mental health. Hence, you need to be extremely careful to kind of give yourself kindness to be able to, not take everything to your absolute heart and be basically troubled within your emotions and with regards to how you're feeling about things right now when it comes to your family and your equations within your house. So that is something that you need to kind of look out for and be careful of. And what we see next is on the 26th of October, Mercury is also coming into this whole the kind of conjunction of this energy that is happening in your 4th house in the sign of Libra. So what happens here is all the kind of troubles which are already being created in your 4th house are basically getting even further catapulted, because Mercury is the planet of communication, and it being conjunct with Ketu in your 4th house, which regards with family, and in the 7th sign of Libra, which talks about a lot about peace and a lot about balance. So what we can see here is that the communication within your family will become a little stunted, and it can have challenges with regards to miscommunicating or misconstruing things which are kind of being communicated within you. And this can lead to further sort of wanting to slow down on any sort of communicational channels that you're kind of wanting to develop to basically conflict resolve right now are going to all fall short, and is going to further exacerbate the underlying tensions which are right now running through the home and the family at this point. So any sort of peaceful conversations or peaceful sort of resolutions will not materialize how you want them to, and this can lead you to further kind of isolate and go within yourself, and rather than putting any efforts into the equation, because it keeps on falling short of what you expect it to go as, you will kind of want to isolate and just kind of retreat within yourself, rather than kind of facing the problems and the tensions at home, especially at this point of time. And lastly, at the tail end of the month, on the 30th of October, Mars is going to go retrograde in Gemini. So all the significations basically of in the beginning that we discussed about how Mars will come about and what kind of effects will it have when it comes into your 12th house will all kind of turn opposite. So your challenges with regards to isolation, your challenges with regards to how you're basically relating to the spiritual, philosophical, and as well as the religious ideals, and all these kind of things can become the themes of further troubles for you at this point. So all in all, this is this period of time is a little challenging for sure, and you need to kind of give yourself a breather, because the energies are extremely potent and troubling for everyone. So I hope you're able to get through this period of time, and I hope you get some sort of breakthrough with regards to how you're going to deal with the family issues and the equations at home. And I hope peace can further be made at your home, and it can further help you to feel centered and balanced as well. Let me know in the comment section if any of the predictions resonated with you, and thank you so much for watching. So Leo, how this period from the mid of October until the mid of November is going to turn out based on the planetary transits that are taking place during this period. We see that first, on the 16th of October, Mars is going to move into the sign of Gemini in your 11th house. So what this kind of tells us is that you right now can feel a drive to connect with your network circle, to be able to connect with your friends group, and your general conversations with your acquaintances will be something that you kind of focus towards, and it can be even pleasant, but you also can kind of have these sort of instances happen wherein you can get into verbal spats with your friends or even with your network circle, which can also constitute of your colleagues. So that is something that you have to kind of be wary of. And you can also have the possibility come about wherein you are right now looking at increasing your expenses and being able to make exponential benefits and exponential profits from your money and how you're investing it. So you can kind of come about with different sort of investment strategies, different sort of methods that you would like to adopt to be able to further catapult your money making abilities. And that is something that you can actually speak within your circles about, and that can be the undertone of your kind of conversations with your friends and your acquaintances. So that is something that can come about. You can also sort of be somewhere related to maybe some sort of philanthropic initiative. Let's say engage in some sort of protest or some sort of physical representation with regards to any sort of ideals that are in relation to these philanthropic or initiatives that you have taken about can be something that you actually engage in, and you can meet certain like-minded people during this initiative as well. So that is something that can also be a possibility. You also can have there is a possibility of you having some disagreements with your elder siblings, and that is something that can also come about during this period. What we also see here is that from the Mars in your 11th house is going to put its 8th aspect onto the Saturn in your 6th house. So this can very much be the energy which kind of talks about the fact that all the kind of the troubles that you're facing at your work right now with your colleagues, the kind of equations that you have with them, and see, as I said before, there can be chances of you actually getting into verbal spats with your acquaintances or with the kind of network circle you keep around you. So all of these can actually become something that can make you to take on some conflict head on and actually confront someone if there was some sort of underlying tension with regards to maybe people talking behind your back about you, or maybe scheming behind your back regarding something. So that can basically lead to a conflict to come about verbally, especially with the kind of company you're keeping at this point. So that is for sure some sort of expectance of energy that we can see about when it comes to Mars's 8th aspect onto your transiting Saturn in the 6th house. So yeah, you have to be careful of that energy as well. Now what happens next is on the 17th of October, Sun is going to move into the sign of Libra, and it's going to come in your 3rd house, where it's going to get conjunct with Ketu, which is already transiting there. So this is quite substantial for you, especially Leos, because your ruling planet is Sun, and Sun basically gets debilitated or weakened in the sign of Libra, and it's also further weakened because of getting conjunct with Ketu. So for you, this does not bode really great news. And because this is happening in your 3rd house of hard work, in your 3rd house of your abilities to be able to have the self-confidence to back your efforts, to back your dreams, it kind of puts you in a spot where you can right now become quite insecure of how your efforts are materializing, and how your efforts are basically kind of falling inadequately short of the kind of expected outcome you would wish for it to have because of the kind of relations that you're having with people around you. So this kind of conflict can come about where you feel a little isolated with regards to how you're able to connect with people, and that sort of connection and the loss of connection with people is causing you to even further doubt your own ability to achieve things that you would like to. And that basically can be the underlying energy with regards to this aspect and this kind of transit. Communication is not going to be a really great suit for you right now. So you, as I even mentioned before, your communication at this point can be extremely conflicting. It can be extremely violent, and it can lead you to have these sort of confrontations which you generally maybe would not want to have. So there is a possibility of you actually taking certain things head on and maybe even further regretting those things. But there can also be the fact that you're finally sticking up for yourself, having kind of bore the brunt of people kind of not basically respecting you the way you would want to be respected. So that is also something that can come about. You can also feel that the people around you are kind of not acknowledging the hard work or the amount of effort that goes behind the conviction that you have with regards to your efficiency. That can also basically dampen how much drive you yourself are able to pursue your own objectives with. So those are the kind of things you have to look out for, and just be wary of the way you're right now communicating. If you're kind of standing up for yourself with regards to something that you clearly feel is wrong, then maybe that is justified, but still there's always less conflicting way of going about actually resolving conflict. So maybe try to look into those things and not necessarily have a meltdown and basically go about a tirade wherein everyone that you sort of feel has wronged you in a certain way can come under the fire, and that's how you will sort of jeopardize the kind of connections you have even formed until now. So that is something that you have to be kind of wary of. Now, what happens next is on the 18th of October, Venus is going to join Sun here in the sign of Libra in your third house, and it is going to get conjunct with Ketu. So the significations that would have been positive because of the fact that Venus is the planet that rules the sign of Libra, so it would have been extremely positive, all sort of go haywire and they turn opposite because of getting conjunct with Ketu here. So the kind of possibilities which can come about is that the pleasantries in your communication can kind of become devoid of how you want to converse with people. So it can be extremely direct and with no sense of, let's say, there is no masking of the emotions that you're feeling right now, and the way you're communicating them also is going to be extremely direct and can border on becoming harsh towards people around you. And you can feel that the effort that you are putting into your romantic relationships are not basically materializing, and you can feel quite dejected because of that fact, because even though you might feel like I am giving my 100% to something, you feel like the reciprocation is not happening to you. So which can basically feel like there are unequal scales of efforts happening in this romantic relationship, and hence you feel dejected to pursue it and to be able to find any sort of pleasure or any sort of love within that equation. So that sort of feeling and that sort of equation can also come about, and it can cause you to feel extremely dissatisfied with the romantic relationships that you have in your life at this point. So that sort of energy can also present itself. You can also sort of within your monetary equations of how you're dealing with your money right now needs to be a little needs to be thought about, and rather than going into a rash decision and basically wanting to get rich quick schemes, rather than following those, you need to sit back and give your monetary investments a great thought, rather than just being influenced by how people are kind of investing around you. You need to be wary because there is a possibility of you actually losing out on money at this point. So you need to be wary of just following the herd and going where everyone is going, and kind of use your conviction to be able to not basically have monetary losses at this point, because that can be a possibility as well. What happens next is on the 23rd of October, Saturn is going to turn direct in your 6th house. So all the sort of trials and tribulations which came about because of the fact that you had certain sort of tensions which were under the skin, basically going about with your colleagues at work, and how you were in general feeling about your work and your routine, can basically turn opposite and be more positive and forward going in its motion. So you can feel a little relieved with regards to how the situations are right now culminating at your workplace and how you're feeling about your work prospects. So I've spoken about this transit in detail, and I will be linking that video down in the comments in the description box. You can definitely check that out. So all the kind of significations that have been discussed in that video because it's a retrograde Saturn video, will all turn opposite. So all the lessons that you've learned because of all these challenges which came about within the transit period of retrograde motion of the Saturn, you will now feel a more forward going motion and a more positive emotion with regards to how this Saturn is basically impacting you and your work prospects and the kind of relations you have with your work colleagues. So it's a positive sort of change in its regard in that way. But what happens here is the Saturn here from the 6th house makes a 10th aspect onto your 3rd house, where already Sun, Venus, and Ketu are present. So what can come about here is the fact that the way you're able to kind of amalgamate your relations at work, how you're able to kind of balance them, how you're able to basically put efforts into making peace and making those dynamics more equalized is going to be extremely important for you with regards to how professionally efficient you want to be and you vouch to be and you kind of work towards being. So that is something that can come about. So you have to be extremely careful of not kind of jarring the scales of the kind of dynamics you have at work so much that it will further negatively just impact your own work efficiency, because you can't work alone, right? You have to sort of depend on other people. So that is something that you have to look at, because these kind of equations are basically going to help you to feel further self-assured and basically more confident within the efforts that you're able to put right now, within the hard work and the kind of outcomes that you're expecting to come about with those things. So that is something that you have to basically look at and kind of try to improvise and kind of try to work upon at this point. So what happens next is on the 25th of October, we have Moon moving into the sign of Libra, and this is happening in your 3rd house, and it's going to get conjunct its own south node and all the other planets which are there right now, which is the Sun and the Venus. And also we have a solar eclipse on this day. So what happens is all this sort of energy and all this sort of conflict which is arising when it comes to your equation with other people, the kind of verbal spats that might be coming about, the kind of communicational channel issues that are happening are all going to come to a head, and is going to have you basically have a mental breakdown in a sort of way. So all these kind of troubles are going to impact you extremely when it comes to your emotions and your mind at this point on the 25th of October, because it's the planetary energies are extremely intense during this time. So you have to give yourself the sort of grace and kindness to kind of take a step back and kind of reevaluate how you're handling things with people, how you're able to strike peace with the people that you're working with, and how basically by doing so you will also help yourself to be able to achieve your goals better. So that sort of energy needs to be something that you need to work at and reconsider during this time, because it can get quite intense, especially on this day. So that is something that you can expect to come about at this point on the 25th of October. Now, what happens next is on the 26th of October, Mercury is going to move into the sign of Libra in your 4th house. So already all the communicational issues we were already facing with all the other sort of transits which were happening is only going to get exacerbated with Mercury moving into your 3rd house and getting conjunct Ketu. So all the communicational channels that you sort of want to set up in case you want to resolve conflict with the people that you work with, or resolve conflict with the kind of network circle you have, is going to feel like it's falling on deaf ears, and you will feel like it's the effort that you're putting in is inadequate with regards to the resolution that you kind of want to achieve at this point. So even though you might think you're putting in efforts, even though you might think you're working towards it, it might not feel like it's materializing because the communicational channels are sort of, destroyed because of the initial sort of bouts of anger or the bouts of sort of conflicting energies that came about. So you will have to stay more patient and kind of work towards getting your equations back with the people where it were before this sort of energy came about and kind of created a further um, mix into all these conflicting communicational channels and conflict resolutions. So that is something that you will have to kind of look out for. And even when it comes to with regards to your business, you can feel that your communications with your partners are not going how you want them to, and that can further create issues with regards to how your efforts are materializing into the success that you want to seek at this point. So yeah, so you need to be extremely careful of how you're communicating with people, because that is the main kind of energy that comes about within you, and for how basically this period of span of time is going to be challenging for you, especially. Now, at the tail end of the month, on the 30th of October, Mars is going to turn retrograde in Gemini. So, all the sort of significations which we discussed in the beginning are all going to turn opposite. So, you are now going to face troubles even further so with your network circle, with how you communicate with your network circle, how you're able to relate with your network circle. So you need to just majorly look out for how you're communicating. Is it passive aggressive? Is it basically being having any positive influence with your own efforts, and how you're looking at those things? So that is something that is the main crux of this period and the planetary energies for you. It's a little challenging period for everybody right now, and I hope you're able to come through on the other end of this by maybe learning something about your own communicational channels and basically being able to go further into the peaceful prospects of relating with other people and your network circle. So let me know in the comment section if any of these predictions resonated with you, and thank you for watching. So Virgos, for you, how this period of mid of October until the mid of November is going to turn out based on the planetary transits that are taking place during this period. We see that first on the 16th of October, Mars is going to transit into the sign of Gemini in your 10th house. So this kind of brings forth the energies of the fact that you are right now being extremely lively and extremely communicative at your workplace. So people right now are perceiving you to be extremely qualified when it comes to being able to be a communicative asset to your team or to the equation that you have at work. So you're going to be regarded as someone who can bring forth and communicate the sort of ideals or communicate the sort of work that you are putting into your projects and things like that. So that is something which is extremely positive, and you can even find fun within the work prospects that you're having right now, and this can further create even better communicational channels and impressions with your superiors at work as well. So all in all, it's a very, very positive sort of equation which will come about. And also Mars does extremely well in the 10th house because it kind of gets its directional strength in this house. So all in all, you will feel a new surge of energy and competence and confidence at your work and how you're dealing with your work. So for you, this is an extremely positive period of time when it comes to your work prospects and your professional dealings and how you're basically going about that whole area. So that is going to come about, and Mars from here is putting its 10th aspect onto your 5th house where Saturn is transiting at this point. So what happens here is that with regards to all this efficiency that you're feeling at work, right, is going to make you feel even more enlivened and even more lively when it comes to your romantic relationships when it comes to how you derive fun and pleasure in life in general. So also how you're able to cultivate your creativity. So all in all, you are going to feel this surge of energy, this surge of coherence, this surge of creativity, this surge of competence when it comes to your work and how you're dealing with your professional prospects. And that sort of confidence is going to parlay into how you even view yourself within your romantic equations. So yeah, so that sort of mutual energy distribution is going to happen. It can make you feel extremely good about yourself, basically. Also because, Virgos are well known for being, head down, work hard sort of individuals. So the sort of energy and the sort of culmination of energy can be extremely self-rewarding. What we see next is on the 17th of October, Sun is going to move into the sign of Libra in your second house, and it is going to get conjunct with Ketu, which is already transiting there. So what we need to remember is that Sun is basically debilitated or weakened in the sign of Libra, and it is further basically devoid of its powers here because of being conjunct with Ketu as well. So what happens here because of this is that your equations with your family, your equations with the values that your family has can become quite distorted. So your identity and how you're basically seeking your identity from your familial values can become something which is something you feel alienated from at this point, which is something you can question at this point. So as well as you were feeling about your professional prospects, that insecurity or basically that amount of questioning can come about when it comes to your family unit or the kind of values that your family has regarding things. So which can further lead you to kind of not have as great relations at this point with your family. It can create conflicts at this point with your family, and that is something that you have to be careful of. You also can see that in your romantic relationships, as I mentioned before, you though can feel invigorated, you though can feel that you're able to, have this sort of energy with regards to how good you're feeling about yourself when it comes to the work prospects. But you are going to feel that you're not able to have that sort of connection or that sort of just feeling like you're not at the same level or at the same sort of energy with regards to your romantic relationships, especially how you're able to communicate within them. So it can feel like your communicational channels are basically failing when it comes to your romantic relationships. And that can further kind of make you question your identity, even to a certain extent. It can make you question the relationships that you're in. It can make you question the values that you believe in, which are basically shaping the kind of relationships you've had and are having until this point. So it's a kind of energy which makes you very contemplative of these sort of ideals that you have when it comes to relationships in general and even familial relationships especially. So what we see also is that next on the 18th of October, Venus is going to conjoin here in your second house and is going to get conjunct with Ketu. So the kind of transit which would have been positive because Libra is a sign which is ruled by Venus, we see that the significations turn quite opposite. So these kind of values, what we were talking about, this kind of feeling that your familial values are basically not in coherence or are not basically aligning with your ideals, can be with regards to either how you're dealing with your partners, how you're basically conducting your romantic partnerships, even your business partnerships. and also how you are basically looking at your monetary security and your monetary ability to save, for a better future and things like that. So that can be the stickler point of having conflict within your family, and the kind of disparaging values that you feel are happening within how your family views certain things and how you are able to kind of inculcate and view certain things. So that can be the crux of the kind of conflict which is ensuing right now, and this can kind of make you the communication and the conflict resolution at this point quite challenging. So that sort of energy comes about because of this transit, and that is something that you will need to have to work at if you need to keep the kind of peace and a sort of equality within your home and family structure. So this sort of equation needs to be addressed and it needs to be worked upon for sure. What we see next is on the 23rd of October, Saturn is going to turn direct in your fifth house. So this can further tie into all the sort of challenges that you might have faced with regards to, let's say, even let's say self identity, let's even say your creative pursuits, which can also be with regards to maybe some riskier investments that you have made, right? So all the lessons that you've learned regarding these themes can basically tend to turn positive right now and feel like it's more moving in the forward momentum. So what can come about now is that you might actually want to invest more and more into riskier investment strategies, which can give you greater benefits than just saving money on a very secure basis. And as I said before, that can be the reason of the conflict that is happening within your familial values. So that is something that you have to kind of look out for to basically strike a balance between, your safe investments and your basically riskier investments. So that is something that can come about. And also, if you do have children, I think your relationship with them is going to be more positive at this point, because the fifth house is also the house of children and creativity. So that can also come about. And also feel that your authority at work and how you're perceived at work, as I mentioned before, is going to turn extremely positive, and your authority is going to be much more regarded in a positive sense with this transit. What we also see is that Saturn from this house basically makes its 10th aspect onto your second house. So this further talks about the fact that you can right now feel, how to say this in a way which is not as egregious, but you can feel quite egotistical at this point to a certain extent, because things might be going really well for you professionally, and that can sort of give you a false sense of entitlement to a certain extent, wherein you think everything you sort of touch becomes gold. Though this is not the general disposition of how Virgos are, but it can be something that you kind of feel right now with regards to your work, and especially with regards to your investments. And that is something that you need to resolve. You need to be able to equalize when it comes to a balanced approach with regards to how you are relating with your family and your values when it comes to money, and how you want to invest that in safer and riskier instruments alike. So that will surely be something you need to be careful of, because otherwise the Venus being affected in this house will definitely lead you to have some sort of monetary losses. So that is something that you have to kind of work towards equalizing, and basically having a bridge between those sort of inclinations of having riskier and safer investments at this point. So that for sure is something. And also you can see that your children might actually, when it comes to your relationships, if you're feeling incapable of basically dealing or basically creating peaceful relations within your home and within your family, your children might actually come into play, wherein they can facilitate or they can catapult this sort of catalyze a sort of re-communicational channel, or a sort of conflict resolution that might not have been otherwise possible. So that can also be a possibility at this point. So what happens next is, on the 25th of October, we see that moon is going to be transiting into the sign of Libra and in your second house. So I've not spoken about the moon's transit throughout the month because it keeps changing often, and it keeps changing its sign every 2.5 days. But this is quite significant because it's happening in your second house with all the other energies which are already present there. So, and it's getting conjunct with its own south node. So what can happen, which is Ketu? So what can happen is that one of the possibilities is you have to kind of look out for how your eating habits are going to be influenced by all this conflict that is happening within your home. And that is something that you have to look out for because it can turn quite erratic. You can sort of resort to emotional eating to kind of have the sort of resolution within yourself of the conflict, even though externally it might not be happening. So that is something that can come about. You can also feel that all the tensions which were arising within your family can come to a head, and it can have this sort of explosive tendency of dealing with some sort of conflicts that come about, which really impact your psyche or your emotions or your feelings towards how you're dealing with the conflict which is arising within your family at this point. So you have to kind of be wary of that and be able to give yourself a break in order to kind of take a step back and reevaluate how you're dealing with this conflict and how it is even impacting your own emotions and your mind and your feelings. So this is a little challenging, and you have to look out for this because on the 25th, we are also going to be seeing a solar eclipse. So it's a very intense energy on this day, which you have to be wary of, and you have to kind of, give yourself the kindness and a break to be able to take a step back, reconsider, reevaluate, reprioritize, and basically realign all these energies in the second house of, your family, your values, your investments, and things like that. Now, what happens next is on the 26th of October, we see Mercury is going to conjoin all these challenging energies in your second house. So all the troubles which were already being present there are going to further exacerbate because of the fact that your communicational channels now with your family are going to be strained. They're going to feel extremely unequal, and they're going to feel very alienating. So even though you would want to have these sort of conflict resolutions by sitting down with your family, being able to make them understand maybe your views of certain things and be able to communicate regarding what their issues are with those things, it will become extremely challenging to reach a common ground and to be able to communicate those ideals effectively, and them being able to lead to a conflict resolution and be able to reset the peace within your family unit. So all of these things can become more challenging because of the communicational channels and patterns, which will become extremely difficult at this point. Especially in regards to your family unit. So that is going to be a little challenging as well, and is going to add to all the chaotic, challenging energy which is already present with all the other planetary transits which are taking place. So what happens at the tail end of the month is on the 30th of October, Mars is going to turn retrograde. So now what is happening is that all the positive energy professionally which started happening within, the beginning of the midpoint of the month is going to turn quite opposite. So all this challenging energies basically within the family unit is going to even impact your efficiency at work now. So you are now set to question even further, not just your family unit or the family values. You are now going to also consider how you're able to kind of channelize your energy even within your professional prospects. So this sort of distribution of efforts and energy within these two conflicting sort of things which are happening in your life, which is the family and the career, is going to come about, and this energy can also become extremely challenging because things are already not seeming to be extremely positive at this point. So all in all, it is something that you have to take into stride, because this period of time is extremely difficult when it comes to all the planetary transits which are taking place during this period. So you have to kind of work towards bringing that sort of peace and bringing the sort of equality within your ideals and your family's ideals, so especially with regards to how you're saving, investing your money, and how you're able to basically parlay that sort of confidence even within your professional prospects, and be able to be more efficient and be more work oriented, as your sign always prefers to be. So I hope you're able to get through the other end of this challenging period and basically resolve these sort of conflicts, or be able to work towards getting some sort of resolution. And let me know in the comment section if any of these predictions resonated with you. And thank you so much for watching. So with the personalized predictions of all of the signs, we come to the end of this video. I hope you found relevance with the predictions that were shared for the signs in this period. And let me know in the comment section if you resonated with anything that has been predicted or spoken about in this video. I would love to know what your experiences are at this point, and I hope you're able to tide through this time and make peace with the things that are happening right now, and be able to resolve the conflicts that you might be facing at this point. Also, please don't forget again to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon with the next video. Until then, take care, you all.